My name is Christine, and I'm 41 years old. I'm a housewife. I met my husband, Mark, at work, and we got married. After 5 years of being married, we had our son, Jake, who is now 5. He's at a really cute age, and I'd love to spend all day with him if I could, but we need money, so I have to work and leave him at daycare. One day, Jake asked, "Mommy, I want an omelette tomorrow." How could I say no to that? Maybe Jake understands how busy I am, because he never asks for difficult meals. I'm not a great cook and don't make fancy dishes, but I think omelets are hard to make. Getting them just right takes skill, but I'm probably just making excuses. Mark was really happy when Jake was born. After waiting for so many years, he was our miracle. We were a close family, always going on drives and trips to the park every weekend. But when Jake turned 3, things started to change. Once Jake grew out of his terrible threes, Mark started coming home later and later. Before that, he used to complain about how hard it was to deal with Jake being fussy, and maybe that's why he stayed out more. Whenever he'd call to say he was working late, I couldn't help but feel disappointed. I knew the truth, Mark wasn't really working late. He was spending time at slot machines, in restaurants, or at the movies. One of Mark's colleagues, who is also one of my old coworkers, told me, "I quit my job after we got married, but I still keep in touch with some of my old colleagues." Mark knows I found out, but he doesn't care. Part of me feels upset about this, but I would rather he be out late than see him get annoyed with Jake's behavior. But Mark started coming home even later, sometimes in the morning. Who does he think he is? Sometimes I could smell perfume on his suit, and it didn't make me feel good. It made me angry. Mark was a good father when Jake wasn't being difficult, so I let it slide. But now, 2 years later, Jake is a cheeky 5-year-old, and I'm tired of Mark's bad attitude. One day, Jake spilled a bit of tea and I said, "Oh no, wait here while I get a cloth." Mark yelled at me, saying, "What's wrong with you? You're 5 years old and can't hold a cup properly?" Jake asked, "Daddy, play with me," but Mark yelled back, "I'm busy, don't bother me." When I asked about dinner, Mark just said, "I don't need dinner," and left. How am I supposed to eat peacefully in a house like this? I don't even want to eat his badly cooked food. I just go out instead. Mark gets mad about everything I say. I suggested, "We should go somewhere on your next day off," and he snapped, "Are you serious? I'm tired from work. Let me rest on my day off." No matter what I say, he just yells. We can't have a normal conversation. It's like Mark is still in his fussy phase, and he's 40 years old now. One time, I asked Mark why he was always so angry, and he yelled back, "It's because you're useless, obviously, and now you're passing that on to Jake. I wish he was more like me." That really hurt. Jake is our son, both of ours. At least Jake has my good looks. Mark was acting like all of Jake's good qualities came from him, and the bad ones were from me. I couldn't believe how rude he was. I kept getting more frustrated with Mark. His words and actions were hurting me emotionally. I even thought about divorcing him. His behavior was close to ending our marriage, but I stayed because I still loved him. Even though Jake was scared of Mark, he still loved him too. I was so tired of being with a husband who was always in a bad mood, but I didn't have the courage to break up our family. One day, Mark brought up something. "A trip," he said. "What?" I asked. "Yeah, a trip with some coworkers. You know them, right? The 2 guys who love their single life?" "Oh, those guys. Yeah, they're going on a trip, and I decided to join them." "Seriously?" I said, shocked. "What's the problem? I've been patient for so long. This family takes up all my time. I never get time for myself, and you spend all the money I earn on useless things. I deserve to relax sometimes. I don't spend money on luxuries. We live very frugally because you only give me the minimum amount of money," I said. This was the truth. I worked hard and made money, but the more I worked, the less Mark contributed to our family. I actually put more money into the household than he did. He was probably spending his money on other things, which is why he could afford the trip. "Shut up. I'm going on the trip in 4 weeks, whether you like it or not, and you better not complain," he said. "Tomorrow." I was shocked by the trip, but even more surprised that it was happening so soon. Tomorrow. I felt my anger rising, and I was about to argue, but then I heard, "Mommy." It was Jake, who was supposed to be asleep. I rushed to him. "I'm sorry, Jake, did I wake you? Let's go back to your room, and I'll sleep with you." But as soon as I touched him, I knew something was wrong. "Jake, you're burning up. My head hurts, Mommy," he said. I looked at Jake's face, and then suddenly, his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed. I panicked and called an ambulance. Mark, who I thought would come with us, refused. There was so much I wanted to say, but I didn't have time to argue. I had to go to the hospital alone. Thankfully, Jake's test results showed nothing serious, but they kept him in the hospital for more tests, just to be safe. I called Mark to update him. "What do you want?" he answered, sounding annoyed. I could tell he was irritated, but I didn't have time to care. I told him what had happened and asked him to bring a change of clothes for Jake. "Are you joking?" he replied. "I can't make it," he said. "What do you mean?" I asked. I said I can't make it. I'm not going to be late for tomorrow's trip. I'm staying with my colleague tonight, he told me. "Are you serious? Your son is in the hospital, and you're still going on a trip?" I asked, shocked. "Of course, he doesn't need me for a simple checkup. He's just got a fever. There's nothing I can do." "Yes, there is," I said. "I've gotta go. I'll bring you a souvenir," he added, then hung up. I tried calling him again, but he had turned off his phone. My anger boiled over, and I had no choice but to call my parents for help. Mark had abandoned his son in the hospital. That was 2 strikes. The 3rd strike was coming soon, and I could feel it. 3 days later, the tests were done, and Jake was back to his energetic self. He'd be discharged tomorrow. I planned to buy him some pudding, but when I checked my phone, it started vibrating. I almost dropped it, but I grabbed it in time. It was a call from Cindy, a former colleague. "Hello?" I answered. "Christine, where are you?" she asked urgently. "Huh? I'm at the hospital," I replied. "Never mind that. There's an emergency. Your husband's been in an accident and passed away," she said. I didn't understand. I thought she was joking. "What? This is a joke, right?" I said. But her voice on the other end was serious, and I started running in panic. My husband had died. That was shocking enough, but Cindy continued. "Apparently, Mark was on a trip with a woman, and she drove into oncoming traffic and hit a tree." I couldn't believe it. Mark was supposed to be with his male colleagues, not with a woman. It didn't make sense. It couldn't be true. I called my parents to ask them to look after Jake, then rushed to the hospital where Mark was. I couldn't help but wonder why they had called the company before me. It seemed like the news wasn't a lie, so I had to hurry. Cindy said the other men Mark was supposed to be with were safe. Of course, that meant Mark wasn't with them. He'd been with another woman. That was 3 strikes. 3 strikes and you're out. I needed to find out for sure if Mark was really dead. I rushed to the hospital. "Honey?" I called as I opened the hospital room door. There was Mark, lying in bed. His hands and feet were wrapped in bandages, but he was breathing. Cindy's news was wrong. Mark was alive. I sighed in relief. "You're alive," I said, moving closer. When I looked at his face, his eyes were slightly open. He seemed shaken, probably surprised that the company had contacted me so quickly. Mark grumbled. "Took you long enough. Your husband's in an accident, and it takes you ages to get here, you useless piece of..." At least he was still his usual self. He looked pretty hurt, but it seemed he had only broken his left hand and right leg. The car was wrecked, though. What luck he had. "I'm glad you're okay," I told him, and he replied, "You better take good care of me." Well, looks like he's feeling fine, I thought to myself. Good to know. I pulled out a piece of paper. "Let's get to it. You may have escaped death, but you don't get a pass on 3 strikes. When I say I'm glad you're okay, I mean your right hand. If you had broken that, you wouldn't be able to sign these papers." Mark looked confused. "What are you talking about?" I unfolded the papers in front of him. "Huh? What's this?" "Divorce papers," I said calmly. "I've been preparing these, which is why I'm late getting here. I know you're hurt, so I'll just leave them here. Make sure you sign them." Mark was shocked. "You're joking. Why would I sign this?" "Wow, you told your girlfriend you were getting a divorce, didn't you?" I asked. "The reason you were coming home late every night was because you were with her, wasn't it? Was this trip your little getaway to prepare for your new life? Well, now you can marry your sweet Michelle." "How do you know her name?" he asked, clearly surprised. "I spoke to her, of course, before coming to see you. I went to visit the woman you were with in the hospital. She was in the same place, recovering from the accident too. She had broken a few bones, but she seemed in better shape than you. Her parents were there with her." I explained to her everything I needed to know. I couldn't tell her I was coming to see Mark. But I had to find out if he was dead or alive. It turned out, he was alive. Even though her parents were asking her questions, she looked at me with a glare and said, "Let him go. I don't understand why you're sticking with him. He doesn't pay his bills. He's out every night. He doesn't even care about his kid in the hospital. And the cheating? It's over." Mark's face went pale. I had expected him to argue, but I wasn't changing my mind. "No, no, she's just for fun," Mark quickly said. "You're the only one I love." "Just stop," I said. "Here's the paper. I've already filled out my part. Even if you tear it up, I've got more copies. Actually, I could just call a lawyer." "A lawyer?" he said, confused. "That's right. We need to talk about alimony and child support, so we should get a lawyer involved." "No, wait a second," Mark said, starting to panic. "What did you just say?" "Think about it. You can keep living your life however you want, spending your money on whoever you like, but if you want to stay with me, you'll have to keep playing your little games with women, while I take care of everything. You'd have a wife at home for security and a girlfriend for fun, but if we get divorced, all that changes, right?" Mark couldn't say anything. He just stared at me in shock, completely silent. "Sorry to break it to you, but your perfect plan is ruined. You can start a new life with Michelle or whoever you want, but my son and I won't be part of it. Just pretend you died and start fresh." I said everything I wanted to say and started to leave the hospital room. Wait. I heard Mark's pathetic voice calling behind me, but I just kept walking. In the following days, I hired a lawyer and started the divorce process. Michelle was discharged from the hospital, and she got involved in the talks too. When Mark said he didn't want a divorce, Michelle got furious. They argued loudly. When I mentioned alimony, Michelle yelled, "You've ruined my life." "I don't care about someone who gets involved with married men," I snapped back. "You're the one who went after me." "Shut up," she shouted. "I never did that," Mark said, trying to defend himself. I thought, can you just sign the papers already? I stayed silent as I watched them argue. Despite Mark's resistance, the evidence was clear. In the end, our divorce was finalized, and I got almost all the alimony I asked for. The child support was paid in a lump sum. Once everything was settled, my lawyer and I left, but Mark and Michelle were still arguing. I wondered how their relationship would survive after this, but honestly, I didn't care. Before leaving, I told them, "I hope you two have a nice life together," which might have been a bit petty, but I didn't mind. I just hoped Jake wouldn't pick up on my petty behavior. Despite everything that had happened, Jake and I found peace again. He was so much happier now that he didn't have to deal with Mark's moods. It made me regret not divorcing earlier. Mark's attitude had caused both of us so much pain. How had I stuck with such a terrible husband for so long? Living just with Jake, I realized something. We were better off without Mark. Every day was now filled with joy. That said, Mark would always be Jake's father. If he wanted to see him, I would let him. I asked Jake, "Do you want to see Daddy?" "No," he answered. "Why not?" I asked. After the divorce, I confirmed that the alimony and child support payments had been made, then sent Mark an email. He replied right away with the subject, "Help." I opened it and couldn't help but laugh. Mark's former colleague had spread the news about his cheating to the whole company, and now Mark was dealing with the gossip and stares. He was making mistakes at work and eventually had to leave the company. "My parents have cut me off. I have nowhere to go. Please help me." Can you believe it? Being the kind person I am, I replied, "Why don't you ask your sweet Michelle to help you?" And guess what he said? I broke up with Michelle. Her parents cut her off too, and now she's missing. I've finally realized, you're the only one I love. Please help me. His message continued. I'm behind on my cell phone bill, and it's going to get cut off tomorrow. Please come pick me up. I blocked him after that. We had moved by then, and he didn't know where we were. As I sat down with my tea, Jake came over and asked, "What should we do tomorrow, Mommy?" I thought for a moment. How about I pack us some lunch, and we go to the aquarium? Jake's face lit up. I want to go to the dolphin show. Seeing how happy Jake was, I couldn't help but smile.
I was over the moon, having just married the love of my life. But one day, a package arrived for my mother-in-law. Excitedly, I opened it, only to find a surprise of another kind. It sent my relationship with my husband spiraling into a nightmare. But I'll be damned if I let her win. I refuse to let things go her way. My name is Jessica. I married my husband David just 6 months ago. We're still newlyweds, planning to make many happy memories together. But then something unimaginable happened. It started a month after our wedding. I was cleaning the house, now a full-time homemaker, when the doorbell rang. A package for me. The sender, my mother-in-law. A package from my mother-in-law? I wonder what it is, I thought. I had received no notice of a package being sent, and David hadn't mentioned anything either. Curious, I opened the box. Inside, I found clothes, not exactly fashionable and very well worn. What? What are these? Old clothes. I was flabbergasted by the array of second-hand clothes, some even with holes in them. There were clothes that must have been fashionable once but now were just garish. Just then, the phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. "Oh, Jessica dear, did you get my gift?" No. What part of that is a gift? They're clearly old clothes, and they're hideous. How can anyone possibly see that as a gift? As I stood bewildered by this unexpected situation, my mother-in-law started explaining casually. "You see, those clothes are ones I used to wear a long time ago. I found them when I was tidying up my closet." But mother-in-law, some of them have holes in them." "Don't worry, dear. I included some new ones I bought recently. Please try them on." Despite my confusion, my mother-in-law chattered away cheerfully. Was this harassment or was it really just kindness? Honestly, I couldn't figure out my mother-in-law's true intentions. My husband David came home from work and immediately noticed the mountain of old clothes. "Did Mom just give you a gift? That's nice." It was more like she had given them away rather than given them. Even so, if it was really out of kindness from my mother-in-law, I didn't want to seem ungrateful, so I did mention the holes or the poor taste to David. A month later, another package arrived from my mother-in-law. As expected, it was filled entirely with second-hand clothes in an amount incomparable to the last time. Plus, the designs were even worse than before. Who would wear these? I felt bad for my mother-in-law, but this was nothing short of an unwelcome favor. They were just crowding my closet. I should give them away or sell them at a flea market. As I was thinking this, the phone rang again. It was my mother-in-law. "Oh, Jessica, did the clothes arrive?" I gathered some really special pieces this time. My mother-in-law seemed overly cheerful. Even so, it would be problematic if she kept sending them regularly. "They're old and not to my taste. Mother-in-law, I appreciate your sentiment, but I don't usually wear such flashy clothes." When I indirectly refused, she suddenly got angry. Maybe my words had rubbed her the wrong way. "Excuse me, Jessica. What kind of things are you saying about the clothes I went out of my way to send?" The correct response is thank you. No, I appreciate the thought, but just wear them, Jessica. Sending you all those clothes will surely save you some money, won't it? The next time you come over, make sure you're wearing the stuff I've given you, okay? My mother-in-law gave me a one-sided command and then hung up the phone. I sighed. I made her angry. What was more, I never knew that she was the type of person to force her opinions on others so vehemently. That night, I decided to gather up my courage and talk to my husband about it. "David, do you have a minute?" "Wait, you got more presents from my mom." "Well, that's what I wanted to talk about." David was still under the impression that I was being sent presents I would enjoy. When I explained the situation, his eyes widened. "Second-hand clothes." "Yes, second-hand clothes, and they're not my style at all. I can't possibly wear the clothes your mom sent." I tried to gently refuse over the phone, and she got really upset. "Can you talk to her?" David stayed silent for a while. I was troubled because of the stuff his mom had sent. Surely he'd come up with a good solution to smooth things over between me and his mother. "I'll call Mom." David walked out onto the balcony and took out his smartphone. I hoped he would be able to resolve this situation over the phone with his mom. But when he came back from his call, he said something outrageous. "Mom told me she was just trying to do something nice by sending you clothes. You make it sound like it's a nuisance. You should be more grateful." I was baffled at David's words. "Hold on a minute. I told you, right? I can't wear those clothes. They're not my style at all. Mom said it's clothes she used to wear. Are you making fun of my mom's taste?" "That's not what I meant. Besides, some of the clothes even have holes in them. Are you saying I should wear those?" "Enough." Mom started crying when I told her you didn't like the clothes. Please don't upset her anymore. After yelling at me, David stormed off into his own room, slamming the door behind him. "Wait, what? Is this my fault?" I never thought David would take his mom's side. Even if he didn't exactly take my side, he could at least try to understand my feelings. I felt as if I had been betrayed by my husband. Ultimately, another package from my mother-in-law arrived the following month. When I visited my in-laws' home, and it was discovered that I wasn't wearing the clothes she had sent, she exploded. "I went to all this trouble to send them to you. Why aren't you wearing them?" "Yeah, Mom went out of her way to send them to you." David joined her side against me. "No one really cares or notices what you're wearing. More importantly, it's absolutely the worst that you're wasting Mom's kindness like this." It seemed David was completely on his mother's side. "Do you even understand how I feel, being given tasteless old clothes, some even with holes that are out of style?" I felt everything was becoming absurd. All my effort not to spoil my relationship with my mother-in-law and all my explanations to my husband seemed to be in vain. Ignoring my feelings, David started treating me more like a housemaid than ever before. "What is this food? Are you skimping on it? You're lacking awareness as a wife. You're a full-time housewife, so you should do better. There are wrinkles in the laundry. My mother wouldn't make a mistake like this. Do it perfectly." Is he her mini-me? I thought. He was becoming incredibly picky. When I bought new clothes, he yelled, "Even though you wasted Mom's kindness, you're buying new clothes." I didn't know if I could continue this married life any longer. I was pushed to the point where I started to think like that. Then, one day, David's company's trip was confirmed. "Make sure you prepare for my company trip starting tomorrow." I was naturally frustrated, being treated almost like a housemaid recently. However, upon thinking, this might be a chance for revenge. My mother-in-law was still sending me tasteless, worn-out clothes, from men's to children's items, even things that I had no idea what they were. Recently, she even started sending me clothes so dirty I wondered where she picked them up. I dug out the men's clothes from there and stuffed them into David's travel bag. This should do. David's company trip was for 2 nights and 3 days. During this time, I stuffed all the rags that had been sent from my mother-in-law into his suitcase. The next day, as soon as David left for his trip, I began packing my things. When I left the house, I put divorce papers on the table that had already been filled out. At that same time, David, who was on his company trip, was being laughed at by his colleagues. "Hey, what's with those raggedy clothes, man? Did you pick them up from somewhere? Had a fight with your wife, didn't you?" Serves him right. I could picture David panicking. That night, as expected, David called me. "Hey, what's with the contents of the suitcase?" He was clearly furious, even over the phone. I held back laughter as I asked, "Something wrong with your suitcase?" "What do you mean, something wrong? What's with these raggedy clothes? You got something wrong in your head, making your husband wear such things. You think I'm crazy?" I said calmly, "David, remember what you said, right? Those clothes were sent out of goodwill by your mom. Wasting such goodwill would be pretty strange for a son, wouldn't it?" Apparently, David hadn't realized the clothes I packed were from his mother. At my revelation, he choked on his words. "Hey, you listening? Those clothes were sent by your mom. Since you were all for blaming me alongside her, you'll be wearing them without complaint, right?" "Well, that's..." David was utterly flustered. I told him outright, "You understand now, right? Did you finally get a feel for what I was going through?" I left the divorce papers at home. "Divorce. I'll leave the rest to you." And with that, I hung up, leaving things unsaid. David bombarded me with calls and emails, all of which I ignored. Afterwards, I returned to my parents' house. A few days later, my mother-in-law called me. "You listen here, you can't get divorced without my approval. If you don't listen, I'll hire a lawyer and sue you for emotional distress." I responded, "Feel free to do so." A week later, my mother-in-law told me to come to a meeting with a lawyer. I headed to the specified coffee shop. There, my mother-in-law, husband, and someone who seemed to be a lawyer were waiting. "What's this?" "I've already decided on the divorce, so there's nothing to talk about now." With a look like she was about to bite me, my mother-in-law yelled, "Don't mess around. After all we've done for you, we won't allow a selfish divorce." "Exactly," my husband chimed in with her. "I've been made a laughingstock at work because of the clothes you made me wear. Now everyone at work is laughing at me." A laughingstock? Isn't that directly mocking his own mother's taste in clothes? I thought. As I laughed in front of him, my mother-in-law glared with her eyes wide open. "What's so funny? You're such a cheeky wife." She then turned to the lawyer. Hey, Mr. Lawyer, she can't possibly request a divorce from her position, can she? I was told that the wife was the one causing the trouble. The lawyer questioned, looking puzzled. To this I clearly stated, no, it's the other way around. I'm the one who's been harassed by my mother-in-law and husband, being sent clothes like garbage every single month. Upon hearing this, the lawyer seemed perplexed. This is completely different from what I was told. My mother-in-law also seemed flustered. Impatient with their reactions, my husband abruptly stood up. That's it. I'm divorcing a useless wife like you. I'm going to demand full emotional distress compensation, he yelled at me. At the sound of his voice, all the customers turned and looked at us. Taking advantage of this, I asked, so does this mean I have to pay emotional distress compensation? Wait, who exactly are you talking to? The person behind me. Huh. David and my mother-in-law were puzzled. I kindly clarified. Just then, a figure from the back of the room appeared before us. David and my mother-in-law were taken aback, their mouths agape with surprise. It's been a while, Mom. David. The person who appeared was David's brother, Sam. Sam, why are you here? Why am I here? Well, to defend Jessica, of course. Sam, David's older brother, is a renowned attorney specializing in divorce. Initially, my mother-in-law saw his counsel, but when it became apparent that I was the one wronged, he chose to defend me. Wait a minute, Sam. Why? I asked you to defend me, and you declined. Of course I did, Sam raised his voice, because it's clear to me that Jessica isn't at fault. Having heard her side of the story, I learned that you've been using the money I've been sending home every month under the pretense of hard times to torment Jessica, haven't you? That is. Indeed, my mother-in-law had been receiving money from Sam every month. Surely some of it was used for living expenses, but she was using the excess to buy shoddy clothes to send to me, all for the purpose of tormenting me. Sam, in a short time, had researched these facts and saved the evidence. And you, David, the verbal abuse you hurled at Jessica earlier, it's all been recorded. Sam pulled out a voice recorder and played back the harsh words David had shouted earlier. Of course, this too will serve as substantial evidence in the divorce proceedings. Hey Sam, you're kidding, right? Why would you side with Jessica instead of your own family? In response to David's outbursts, Sam answered firmly, I'm a lawyer. No matter how you look at it, the fault lies with you too. Your lawyer also seems to see that there's no hope of winning. Maybe he should decline to represent you. At Sam's words, David's lawyer nodded in agreement and quietly left the cafe. So, you two will be the ones paying the alimony. And Mom, I won't be sending any more money. Understand? Leaving these words behind, Sam left the cafe with me. Thank you, Sam, for helping me, even though you're busy. As I bowed my head, Sam gave me a warm smile. No worries. I just can't stand injustice, family or not. I'm really grateful for your help this time. Thank you so much. And so, thanks to Sam, I was able to divorce peacefully. Of course, I received substantial alimony from my mother-in-law and David. After the divorce, I haven't heard from my mother-in-law or David and have been living a peaceful life. Even though I had to part with Sam, who was so kind to me, because I divorced David, I felt a bit sad. But I need to move on quickly and live my own life, the best life that David and my mother-in-law could ever envy. With that promise in my heart, I started my new life. My name is Trisha, and my husband Brett and I have been married for 3 years. We built our own home right after we got married. Currently, we live with Brett's mother, who raised him as a single parent. The decision to live together was driven by Brett's strong desire to make his mother's life easier and her reluctance to live alone. Despite my initial apprehensions about living with my strong-willed mother-in-law, it turned out to be as difficult as I had imagined. I soon found that my time at work was my only escape. I am responsible for grocery shopping after work and preparing dinner, as my mother-in-law does no housework. I'm using the kitchen right now. Can you wait a bit? She asked. But I need to start making dinner soon, I replied. I'll be done in a little bit. Just wait for me. Okay, I understand. Why is there only one kitchen even though we live together? I wondered aloud. When we suggested a 2-family house, you refused, remember? Did I? I was probably being considerate then. The house would have been more expensive if we had chosen a 2-family house, wouldn't it? That's true, but in hindsight, it might have been better to have at least 2 kitchens. I thought so too, but I was being patient. You should be thankful to me for that. Is that so? I thought you refused the two-family house because you didn't want to be alone. That's not the case. If I could, I would have preferred a two-family house. Should we consider renovating then? Fine by me, but I can't pay for it. If we do, we would need some financial support from you as well. I have no intention to work anymore, and I spent a lot of money on Brett being a single mother, so I hardly have any retirement savings. Therefore, I can't contribute. But Brett and I are paying for all the household expenses, including the mortgage and utilities. If you want a two-family house, we would need your help. I don't have any money to spare. I spent all my money on Brett. Brett is working at a good company, so he should pay me back more than I spent on him. If that's the case, we'll have to cooperate and get along from now on. Why do I have to be told what to do by you? If you earn more money, you can afford to renovate, can't you? I'm not telling you what to do, and I don't think my salary is going to increase any further, so please don't count on me. Even though Brett makes a high salary because he married you with your low income, we can't live comfortably at all. What are you trying to say? Sometimes I can't help but think it would have been nicer if Brett had married someone better. Is that so? You're able to live because of my son, whom I've raised so carefully, so don't get too big for your britches. I'm working too, you know. I know exactly how much you make. You should be more grateful to my high-earning son. I am grateful. But what? If you're living off the money my son earned, so don't complain about this and that. I might be relying on him, but I do earn my own money as well. Enough. Why are you so angry? If you were highly paid, I wouldn't have to put up with these hard days. That's why I'm irritated. Even if you tell me that now, why do I have to live alone with you every day? Because Brett is on a business trip. We have no choice. He's almost never home for the past 3 years. It's his job, so we can't help it. He didn't go on business trips before marriage. Why did this happen? Because he changed jobs. But it's the same profession, right? Can the conditions change that much? It seems like a company with a lot of business trips. I'd rather live alone than this. If you hate living with just the two of us that much, why don't you live alone? Are you going to pay for my living expenses then? Maybe I'll do that. Why don't you ask Brett? Brett will definitely want to live with me. That may be true. I'll talk to him when he comes back on the weekend. During the week, Brett is away on business trips, so it's usually just me and my mother-in-law staying in the house we built. Even though I felt discontented, I tried my best not to cause a conflict. But it seems that my mother-in-law also dislikes living with me. We decided to discuss it when Brett comes home. It doesn't seem to work out with the three of us, so I talked to Brett first. Your mom said she doesn't like living with just me. What? Why? She doesn't like that you're not at home because of your business trips. Well, I can't help it. It's my job. She said she'd rather live alone than live with just me. What? It's your fault for making Mom say that. Why is it my fault? If you got along with her, she wouldn't have said such things. I bet you're just giving her lip, aren't you? No, that's not the case. I've been cooking meals and doing all the house chores properly. Well, that's expected, isn't it? What do you mean by that? Mom has been through a lot raising me. I want her to have an easier time now. And that's why I'm trying to do right by her. Do right by her? House chores are your responsibility. What's with that attitude? Please get along with Mom better. I'm doing my best, but if it's causing stress for both of us, maybe it would be better for her to live on her own. What a waste of money that would be. Well, yes, but maybe we should have built a duplex then. We can't afford a renovation now. If you could just curb your spending habits a bit, that wouldn't be a problem. Why is it always my fault? You're receiving extra for business trips, so instead of wasting it on slot machines, why not put it towards our living expenses? We'll be able to afford a renovation then. I don't want to do that. Slot machines are my only joy during those trips. What are we supposed to do being stressed out then? All you need to do is put in more effort and we'll get along like a real family. That's easy for you to say, but it's not easy to build a real familial bond with your in-laws, you know. You can say that after you've put in the effort. What's that supposed to mean? I'll ask Mom to be a bit more patient with you. Patient? It sounds like you're saying it's all my fault. Man, this is such a hassle. Your job is twofold. To get along with Mom and to take care of the house. I'm counting on you when I'm not home. It seemed Brett had spoken to my mother-in-law because she'd eventually gave up on the idea of me moving out. However, things got even worse after that conversation. One day at dinner, just the two of us again. I don't want this. It tastes bad. What's wrong? You've been very picky lately. Brett told me something. What was it? He said that I should get along better with you. I see. He told me that I should speak my mind and not hold back. Is that so? He said that if I lived as if you were my own daughter, my stress would disappear. So I decided to stop holding back. Even if I didn't want to eat something, I had been eating it anyway. But I decided to stop that too. So that's what it was. From that day forward, my mother-in-law became more and more selfish. My stress piled up higher than ever. Whenever I tried to discuss it with Brett, he would just say that I wasn't trying hard enough and wouldn't help me at all. I finally reached my breaking point. By the way, did you clean the bathroom yesterday? Yes, I did. You left it dirty. After hearing that from my mother-in-law, who had just gotten out of the bath, my anger reached its peak. I'm sick and tired of being nagged about these little things every single day. Huh? Brett told me to treat you like my real daughter, so that's what I'm doing. Real daughter? I don't remember becoming your daughter. What's with that attitude? I think you're mistaking me for a servant, not a daughter. Well, now that you mention it, you do seem like a servant. I'm not your servant. Then why don't you leave? That's what I should be saying. What, do you really plan on kicking me out even though you don't contribute to living expenses? Of course. Brett is the head of the household. But I'm Brett's wife. What are you talking about? I am Brett's mother. Do you think a wife has a higher status? It's not about status or anything like that. Then what is it? Do you think Brett will choose you? I think Brett will choose you, mother-in-law, because he cherishes you so much. That's more like it. Are you really sure it's okay if I leave? Why worry? It'll definitely be okay without you. I feel relieved, actually. Is that so? Even if it might make things financially difficult, it's okay. Huh? Why worry? It's none of your business. I understand. Brett earns $70,000 annually. We're comfortable, so stop undermining us. I'm not undermining. I'm just worried. There's no reason for you to worry. Stop belittling us. Get a divorce quickly. Understood. There seems to be no need to discuss this with Brett. I will pack my things and leave promptly. Finally the nuisance is gone. Several days later, I left without saying anything to Brett. If I had consulted with Brett, who adores his mother, I would have been the one blamed. As if to prove it, there was no contact from Brett, who must have returned from his business trip. I decided to divorce and would meet with Brett alone. Dude, I told you to get along with Mom. Why did you fight? It seems you're only siding with your mother, making everything my fault. What, you want to say you were harassed by Mom? Let's not. There's no need to argue here. I've already decided to get a divorce. Wait, are you intending to divorce me? Yes. Did you think we weren't going to divorce? Well, we're not on bad terms or anything. There's no way I can continue to live with a mother-in-law like that. And you, Brett, you're a mama's boy who has no intention of helping me. I'm not a mama's boy. You're nothing. Is that so? Your mother is all about you, Brett. It's mutual love, so enjoy it. Hey, you must be kidding me. I wish you a lifetime of happiness. We finalized our divorce papers without any issues, and the house, which was mortgaged under Brett's name, became his. A month after the divorce, I received a call from Brett. He said he needed to discuss something with me and his mother, so I reluctantly agreed to meet them. Wait a minute, what's going on? Why are you being so emotional all of a sudden? Don't play innocent. Excuse me, but we can't make ends meet with Brett's earnings alone. Well, of course you can't. What do you mean? We used to cover our living expenses with my earnings too, and he's bringing home less than I thought, less than $70,000 a year. It seems like you were mistaken, mother-in-law. What do you mean? The one making $70,000 a year is me. What? Then how much does Brett make? Brett used to earn around $50,000 a year before he changed jobs, but it dropped significantly after that. I didn't know that. Well, it's not a surprise. It's not something we would necessarily tell you. Even so, his take-home pay is way too low. That's because his salary is being deducted for his gambling debt. What? That's why his take-home pay is significantly less, and I had to supplement the shortfall with my salary. Why didn't you tell me sooner? No, I did tell you. I warned you that it would be financially tough, but then you told me it was none of your business. Well, I didn't say anything because I thought it would be bothersome to you. He seems to be gambling every day on his business trips too. Brett has a gambling addiction, you know. We managed to pay this month's gas, water, electricity, and everything else. But I don't think we can cover them for next month. That sounds tough. It is. So come back. What are you talking about? Marry him again and come back. That's way too convenient for you. If you come back, I promise I won't meddle or complain anymore. I apologize for everything in the past. That's impossible. At that point, Brett, who had been silent all along, spoke up. I didn't know anything about the money situation either. I thought we were making do with just my salary, but there's no way that was possible. I feel guilty for always siding with my mother. Can't we start over? Being able to leave a gambling addict was a relief, so remarrying is absolutely out of the question. What's with that attitude? Moreover, I can't handle a mama's boy. Don't say such things. You two are in love, so why not work together and give it your all? You should be able to make it. I'd like to leave soon if we're done with this topic. It's my day off, and I have things to do. Please come back home. If you don't, I'll be the one who has to work. Please work hard and support Brett. I'm counting on you. Ignoring their pleas for reconciliation, I went home. I had kept their contacts in case something happened, but I took this opportunity to block them and delete their contacts. I requested a transfer to a store near my parents' house and moved into an apartment close by. Brett's house is about a 2-hour drive away, and Brett dislikes my father, so he probably won't come to this area. Half a year later, while working at the previous store near Brett's house as part of a support team, I passed by their house and was surprised to find it was up for sale. They must have been unable to make the payments. Later, while I was at work, I saw my mother-in-law at the supermarket next to the cell phone shop. She noticed me and approached. I finally found you. What's going on? I thought we might meet if I waited here. To my surprise, my mother-in-law was working at the supermarket next to the cell phone shop. Where are you working? You can tell by looking, so yes, I'm working here. So you're working here in hopes of seeing me? That's right. I wanted to ask you to come back home as soon as I saw you. Are you still saying that? I have no intention of returning. Don't say that. We had to sell our house and can't live there anymore. I see. We're somehow managing to live in a small apartment, just the two of us. Well, that's good. You're living happily with your beloved son. Don't mock me. Brett has a part-time job now and often doesn't come home on his days off. We barely have any time to talk. Is that so? Brett must be having a hard time. I didn't want to work anymore, but look at me now. You're having a tough time too, but please continue to support Brett. I can't do it. Please, won't you consider reconciling? Stop being so persistent. I've told you it's impossible. Don't say that. Please. I have to get back to work. I don't have time to engage in pointless conversations. It's not pointless for me. It is pointless. I wish you and Brett a long and happy life together. Wait a minute. Apparently, the two of them who sold the house are now living in a small apartment. As far as I know, they still have 2 years left to repay their gambling debt, so they'll probably live hand to mouth until then. I hope they can work together and overcome this. As for me, I'm doing my job every day with energy and enjoyment. Things have been going well for me since the divorce. Good things come in bunches, and I'm grateful to be dating a wonderful man right now. I want to be happy next time. I'm such a great father for buying our daughter a house. You can leave if you disagree. After all, once you've given me the money, I don't need you anymore. Those were the arrogant words of my husband, who made the unilateral decision to buy a high-rise condo with my money. But it turns out he had a shocking plan in mind. As soon as I heard it, I retaliated without a second thought. I went to my room and brought out our divorce papers. All right here, divorce papers. The look on my husband's face was priceless when he saw the divorce papers. I suppose he never imagined I'd have them ready to go. But the real counterattack was just beginning. I couldn't help but smirk. My name is Lily Johnson. I'm a 50-year-old office worker who has loved the Japanese language since my student days. I can carry on a casual conversation in Japanese without any issues. When I was 23, I married for the first time. Unfortunately, my husband left this world just 6 months after our wedding. The cause was a traffic accident. He was hit by a drunk driver. Back then, I couldn't accept the harsh reality and lived my days with a gloomy face. I received $500,000 in life insurance money after my husband's death, but no amount of money could bring him back. During the darkest times of my life, I was comforted by a man named Ethan Johnson. He was a co-worker at my company who would listen to my story for hours on end. Over time, I found myself falling for him, and we married when I was 25. I never forgot about my first husband. I still vividly remember the times we shared. I decided to keep the life insurance money untouched for emergencies. A year after marrying Ethan, we had a daughter, Mia. Mia is now an illustrator living on her own. With her grown up, one might think I'd have a peaceful life with my husband, but that's not the case. Our relationship started to deteriorate when Mia was in her junior year of high school because we couldn't agree on Mia's education. From the time Mia was born, Ethan had mapped out her future on his own. He repeatedly expressed his wish for Mia to attend a prestigious university, believing it would open up more opportunities for her future. He even enrolled her in tutoring services since elementary school. Ethan never pushed Mia too hard to study, so I didn't oppose. But Mia loved drawing more than studying, and even as an amateur, I could tell she was incredibly talented. I had a hunch she might make it in her career someday. That hunch turned out to be right when Mia announced during her junior year of high school, "I want to be an illustrator in the future, so I want to go to an art school for university." I wanted Mia to pursue what she loved, so I agreed. But Ethan was vehemently opposed. "Go to a prestigious university like Harvard. After graduation, work for a big corporation. It's more secure, and you'll be happier," he yelled, completely dismissing Mia's dream. Even when Mia suggested I could start by working for a company, Ethan wouldn't hear it. "An illustrator? You're just playing around, drawing pictures. I didn't invest all this money in you for you to have such a frivolous career." He was so harsh that I found myself stepping in. "There's no need to speak like that. It's Mia's life. Let her try," I said. But that only made Ethan angrier. "Mia is my daughter. It's a child's job to fulfill their parents' dreams. And if she lives as I say, she's guaranteed to be happy." He spouted such nonsense. There's no guarantee that attending a renowned university or landing a job at a big corporation equals a happy life. It was shocking to realize Ethan held such a distorted belief. I had hoped he would eventually come to understand and support Mia's decision. But that was wishful thinking. Despite our attempts to persuade him, our efforts were in vain. A deep rift formed between us while I took on all the financial responsibility for Mia's education and living expenses. He seemed dissatisfied, constantly complaining and making snide remarks. Despite all this, Mia was admitted to her first choice art university and worked hard on her studies. She landed a job as an illustrator at a company and started living on her own. Though there are tough times, like working through the night and on holidays, she's doing well. However, my husband still refuses to accept Mia's job. He constantly complains, saying we wasted money on tutoring services. "It's embarrassing to have such a failure as a daughter," he often said. I thought his views would change once he saw Mia standing on her own. But there's not even a trace of that. He's also been harsh towards me, presiding with Mia. He yells about the food tasting bad or the cleaning not being done almost every day, despite not being able to do any housework himself and leaving it all to me. At this point, I realized that this was his true nature. He seems to be the type of person who can't stand when things don't go his way. He was kind when Mia was obedient, but changed dramatically when she expressed her desire to become an illustrator. It's probably due to his personality. Being at home was painful for me, and the company became my place of comfort. We work at the same company but in different departments, so we can avoid each other. Around this time, I received a certain offer. Hearing it, I made a big decision. One day, my husband suddenly said something unexpected. "I've decided to buy Mia a brand new high-rise condominium. Mia is still my precious daughter after all. I want her to live somewhere nice. I've already started the paperwork with a real estate agent." Despite his contempt for Mia, this sudden turn of events aroused suspicion. Moreover, I wondered if he had the money to buy a new high-rise condominium. Seeing my reaction, he smirked. "Don't worry, you're the one paying for the high-rise condominium." "What? Hold on a second. You can't just decide something like that without discussing it," I retorted. Ethan just scoffed. I know you've got $500,000 from your previous husband's life insurance, right? You can buy it with that. With your money, I'm going to live in the high-rise condominium with Mia. I've had to put up with her, so I'm planning to make full use of her. You and Mia are ultimately my property, so just obey me. A surge of anger rose within me. He had decided to buy the high-rise condominium despite me and Mia. I couldn't comprehend his way of thinking. Incredibly, he carelessly revealed his scheme and intention. Besides, there was no way I was going to let my important life insurance money be used for such a thing. I am truly a good father, buying a house for my daughter. If you oppose, it's divorce. Just give me the money and I'm done with you. The moment I heard that, I struck back without mercy. I went to my room and brought out the divorce papers. Fine, here, divorce papers. When I showed him the divorce papers, he was stunned. He must not have expected me to have them, but the real retaliation started here. I smirked, facing my bewildered husband. I explained what I had been considering for some time now. I can't trust a man who discriminates against his own daughter like that. I'm tired of living a life where I'm constantly criticized by you. I decided a while ago to divorce you. I was just waiting for the right time to bring it up, and then you said you wanted a divorce. It worked out just fine. He must have intended the divorce talk to be a threat. Completely flustered, he stammered. You see. Ignoring him, I filled in the divorce papers. Come on, you write it down too. You want to be free from me too, don't you? When I urged him, he reacted in rage. What do you mean divorce? It was just a joke. What are you thinking bringing out divorce papers? Hearing that, my anger reached its peak. I don't understand you either. I don't understand why you would buy a high-rise condominium just to spite your family. If you say we can't divorce, I'm willing to consult a lawyer. Begrudgingly, he filled in the divorce papers, but he was furious, saying, Remember this. It seemed like he would retaliate in some form if I stayed in the house. I immediately left the house and submitted the divorce papers to the office. When I reported everything to Mia by phone, she was as angry as I was at my husband's outrageous behavior. That's terrible. You're right to divorce him. You can stay in my condo for a while, she said. So I decided to take her up on her offer. That night, Mia and I discussed and planned to retaliate against my husband. Then, about a week later, on a day off, Mia and I visited the house for my husband, or rather ex-husband, lives. Even though I was living there just a week ago, it felt like someone else's house. When we rang the doorbell, he came out immediately. What do you two want? Did you come to apologize for what happened? My ex-husband looked down on Mia and me with a condescending gaze. I was quite irritated, but I swallowed my anger and spoke in a slightly weak voice. That's right. I came to apologize because I thought I had done something wrong. I'm sorry, Dad. Mia also made a remorseful face, quite an actress. However, my ex-husband didn't realize it was a performance and seemed genuinely pleased, saying, I see, so you decided to reflect on your actions. I'm happy. However, he seemed curious about the bags we were carrying. What are you doing with all those bags? We were carrying bags filled to the brim in both hands. The bags were tied up so you couldn't see inside. I took a stack of $10,000 bills from one of the bags. By the way, this was real money. I thought it was wrong what I did to you, so I decided to give you my late husband's life insurance money. You can live in a high-rise condominium with Mia with this money. There's $500,000. Can you put it in the safe? The ex-husband was entranced by the $10,000 stack of bills. Sure, please put it in the safe. He easily let Mia and me into the house. Even though it had only been a week since we left, the house was littered with laundry and garbage. Come to think of it, the ex-husband was very bad at tidying up and doing housework. Imagining that he must be having a hard time living alone, I couldn't help but smile. Mia and I stuffed the contents of the bags into the safe. However, we put the $10,000 we showed him back in the bag, not in the safe. Fortunately, he wasn't watching us as he went to the kitchen, saying, Onyx some tea. When I returned to Mia's condo, I packed my bags and went out again. I was going to set out on my own to a new place. Take care, Mom. Mia saw me off with a smile. I'll contact you when I settle down. Take care of yourself, Mia. I left Mia's condo with a smile on my face. 2 days later, I was asleep in my new home when I received a call from my ex-husband. Hey, what happened to the $500,000? There's nothing but garbage in the safe. As I burst into laughter, I thought to myself, he really took a while to figure it out, huh? My ex-husband had fallen neatly into my trap. The majority of what was in those bags was simply scrap paper. I had rolled up unwanted newspapers and filled the bags. I told him that each bag contained $500,000. But that was a lie to gain his trust. I did prepare $10,000 in real cash from the bank. That money was immediately returned to my account, so I had nothing to lose. If he had asked to see the contents of the bags, I was ready to show him, scoffing at the absurdity of the situation. But he was fooled by just the sight of the $10,000 and didn't suspect a thing. You've treated Mia and me horribly. I think it's fair to return the favor. If you want to hold a grudge, hold it against your past self, not me. When I said that, he responded desperately, I understand, I was wrong. Can we live together again? I can't afford the high-rise condo, and I can't manage the housework. My place has turned into a trash heap. Taken aback by his self-centered plea, I retorted, I'm not your ATM or your housemaid. You're an adult, figure it out. Besides, I'm in Japan now. I can't come back to you. That's right, I was now living in Tokyo, Japan. This wasn't a mere overseas trip. I received an offer to work abroad from my company and decided to take it up. I've always wanted to work overseas and I love studying Japanese. The offer that came before our divorce was this opportunity to work overseas. Once I heard about it, I decided to divorce him and live overseas. I could live my dream and get away from my ex-husband. It was killing two birds with one stone. I had told Mia, but kept it from my ex, who was clearly taken aback. So that's why I haven't seen you at work recently. Why didn't you tell me? Why should I? We're in different departments and we're strangers now. Oh, by the way, Mia has something she wants to say to you. Tomorrow we'll call you at 8 p.m. your time using a messaging app. Oh, all right. Is Mia going to live with me? We'll see. Wait until tomorrow. I said that and hung up. But I knew what Mia was going to talk about. I was looking forward to seeing his reaction. As I drifted off to sleep, the next morning I had to get up fairly early due to the time difference, but it couldn't be helped. I started up the messaging app and video called my ex and Mia. Mia started expressing her feelings to her father right away. I loved you when I was a kid, Dad. I respected you as a parent and loved you from the bottom of my heart. Ethan looked pleased to hear that, but Mia's speech didn't stop there. But that's all in the past. You outright denied my career path, right? That's when I realized your true nature. You just wanted to control me, and there's no love in that. I hate you now, and I don't want to see you again. This call is our final contact. Upon hearing that, my ex seemed to be on the verge of tears. Don't say such things. I had expected him to get angry, but this reaction was surprising. Maybe he assumed Mia would love him no matter what. But Mia's harsh words continued. This is how I really feel, Dad. You need to reflect on how you hurt Mom all of this time. Also, I moved out, so there's no point in going to the apartment where I used to live. Don't use detectives or anything to forcefully find out my new address. That's all I wanted to say. I also told him something I had forgotten to mention earlier. I've explained the circumstances of our divorce to our workplace, relatives, and your parents. I don't think relying on them will do you any good. Well, goodbye. Once Mia ended the video call, I also ended mine. My ex-husband was pleading, I'm sorry, it's all my fault. I apologize, so please give me another chance. But I didn't care about that anymore. Later, when Mia and I talked, she said, I feel so much better now that I've said what I wanted to. I felt relieved after seeing my ex-husband in distress too. Apparently, it became uncomfortable for my ex-husband at his workplace. Though he resigned, he was disowned by relatives and his own parents. He couldn't buy the high-rise condominium and had to cancel. Moreover, he caused a scene at Mia's workplace, trying to call her out at the reception desk. He was immediately locked out and banned from the premises. My ex-husband, who kept repeating his selfish behavior, ended up losing everything instead of gaining anything. He seems to have lost all his energy and is now living as a recluse at home. A colleague wanted to ask him something about the handover of work and tried to contact him, but he didn't answer. The colleague went to his house reluctantly, where he found my ex-husband looking lifeless with a thick beard. He looked like a ghost, and a bad smell was coming from the room. According to the colleague, his house is probably in a state of a garbage dump. Looking at my ex-husband living such an unfortunate life, I couldn't help but think he got what he deserved. On the other hand, I am enjoying my job overseas. I do get cultural barriers being surrounded by foreigners, but I overcome them by carefully communicating. I can use my proficiency in Japanese, and I'm really glad I transferred overseas. Mia is working hard as an illustrator, and it seems like she's been given some big projects recently. I have a lot of meaningful work, and it's fun, she said over the phone. It's a joy for me as a parent to see my daughter doing what she loves. Despite all the hurdles, both Mia and I are starting to shine in our lives. My mother-in-law casually broke the news to my stunned self. We're going to be living together now. We just remodeled it into a duplex for convenience. The property is in your name, right, Emma? Sorry to bother you, but could you please cover the $80,000 remodeling bill? She and my husband laughed triumphantly. Witnessing this, I filled with resolve. I was about to confront them with the truth that even my husband didn't know, along with the evidence. I am Emma Davis, 26 years old. I live a bit away from downtown in a nature-rich area and work an office job while drawing illustrations as a hobby. Lately, I enjoy uploading my drawings on social media and reading the daily comments. I have a husband who is 3 years older than me, and we were enjoying our married life in our favorite old farmhouse that we bought right after our wedding. However, there has been a visitor to this house once a month since we got married who always gives me a headache. Emma, I'm here. Please open up quickly. Hearing the persistent banging on the sliding front door, I rushed to it. Aha, mother-in-law, I'll open it right away, I said, even though there was a perfectly good doorbell right next to the door. I tried to make a smile as I opened the sliding door. There are so many bugs around here. It's so annoying. Is George still at work? Poor thing, even on Saturday. Oh, I brought some of his favorite food. I saw a woman holding a large bag, looking tired from waiting. Beyond the door, while dealing with her rapid-fire chatter, I pasted on a fake smile. The once-a-month visitor is my husband's mother, my mother-in-law. My husband, being an only child, she insists on taking care of him even after our marriage, and to my gratitude, she even instructs me on house chores. The last time she came to our house, she rearranged all the food in the fridge, and I had to start the next day's breakfast preparation from hunting down the ingredients. I recall my husband repeatedly telling me before we got married, if my parents ever need care, we'll live together. I want you to understand that. I'm disappointed to think I might have to give up this beloved old house when the time comes, but I've come to accept it. What bothers me more is the thought of living with this mother-in-law 24/7. Sorry for my husband, it fills me with a bit of gloom. Fast forward 2 years into our farmhouse married life. I heard from my husband that my father-in-law had slipped on the stairs at home and broke his leg. They will need our help from now on. Let's live together, just as we discussed before our marriage, my husband said. Yes, I'm worried too, so I think it's a good idea. Can I continue my drawing hobby? I was worried about my father-in-law's health, so I agreed without hesitation to move in together. However, I was anxious that being caught up in housework and taking care of my in-laws might rob me of the time for my hobby of drawing. Whether he was aware of my anxiety or not, my husband just said, I want you to prioritize the house, and left the room, headed to his office. Being left alone in my room, I felt like I had half given up on my selfish husband. While looking back at the illustrations I had drawn up until now, one by one, I began to sort out my feelings. Just as I had made up my mind to live with them, an unexpected event occurred. While I was working as usual at my workplace, I suddenly felt numbness in my hands and feet and was instantly overwhelmed by intense dizziness and collapsed. Thanks to a colleague who immediately called an ambulance, my life was not in danger. It turned out to be a stroke at a young age after a medical examination. Although I had been warned about high blood pressure in health checks before, I regretted neglecting it and not going to the hospital. Including detailed examinations, surgery, and rehabilitation, the hospitalization period turned out to be about 2 months. From the discovery of the disease to the hospitalization, everything progressed at a brisk pace, and I realized that my husband had shown very little concern. After being diagnosed with a stroke, I took up my phone with trembling hands and called my husband right away. The only thing I could hear from the phone was his disappointing voice saying, I see, so living together will be postponed, huh? I couldn't respond to the fact that he was more worried about our future living arrangements at my in-laws' house than about my health. Since my father-in-law was still in the hospital with a fracture, there was no immediate need to worry about caregiving. It was a blessing in disguise that I could focus on my treatment. Also, since we don't have children, there was no need to worry about that either. Suddenly, the face of my mother-in-law, who always says, "I want to see my grandchild's face soon," popped up in my mind. As if to shake it off, I picked up the sketchbook nearby. Recently, I've been too busy preparing to live with my in-laws and going through examinations since my collapse to have time for my favorite illustrations. Once I started living with my in-laws, I would probably lose even more time to draw. I decided to think of this hospitalization period as the last free time that God had given me and resolved to fully enjoy my hobby. When this period was over, I decided in my heart to do my best for my husband and in-laws, whether it was housework or anything else. The 2-month hospital stay ended in a flash, and finally, the day of discharge arrived. My husband casually asked if he should come to pick me up, but I wanted to spend some time alone until I got home, so I declined, feeling a bit guilty. While I was on the bus, I saw the familiar landscape outside the window and realized that I was already near home. The sunlight hitting the beautiful green leaves was dazzlingly sparkling, making me feel indescribable as I thought, "This is goodbye to this rich, natural place." Since my in-laws' house is located relatively close to the city center, my life would change drastically from now on. Feeling a little lonely, I slowly got off the bus at the familiar bus stop. As I was heading towards my soon-to-be farewell home, I suddenly stopped in my tracks at the sight before me. There was supposed to be my favorite old private house here, but instead, there was a house I had never seen before. Since I had been in the hospital for about 2 months, I checked the position of the surrounding buildings and the way I came, wondering if I had mistaken the location, but it was not a mistake after all. There was no use wandering around, so I timidly pressed the intercom of the house. A familiar voice said, "Yes." The voice was undoubtedly my husband's. Still feeling confused, I quietly answered, "It's Michelle," into the intercom. The front door creaked open and my husband, in his casual attire, came out. "Aha, welcome home. You came home earlier than I expected. I had the day off today. I could have picked you up." "George, what happened to our house? Why has it changed so much?" I interrupted my husband, who seemed relaxed, maybe just woke up, his hair mussed, to ask my question with a sense of disbelief. However, disregarding my anxiousness, George only responded with a vague, "Huh. What's up? What happened?" without intending to answer my question. Just then, I heard laughter coming from inside the house. Thinking it couldn't be, I pushed past my husband and headed toward the living room. When I opened the unfamiliar door leading to the living room, I saw my mother-in-law lying on the couch, watching TV. She was clutching her stomach and laughing while watching the TV screen. "Why is my mother-in-law in this house?" "Oh, Michelle, welcome back. Hospital stays can be long, but don't worry, I took care of the house while you were gone." I wondered what this house stuff my mother-in-law was talking about could be. Chores? Or, with an overwhelming bad feeling, I pressed my mother-in-law on why the old house had changed so much. Without showing any sign of guilt, she blurted out, "Well, we're all going to live together, right? So I just remodeled it into a duplex to make it more comfortable." The phrase "just remodeled it into a duplex" kept replaying in my mind. My mother-in-law was always the type to interfere with our life, but I never expected her to remodel our house without permission. Moreover, weren't we supposed to start living together in my in-laws' house, which is closer to the city center? Every time my mother-in-law visited our old house, she used to complain about the bugs and the short walk from the station. Despite that, why all these changes? A lot of things have changed. Oh, and there's something else important I have to tell you. Turning off the TV she had been watching, my mother-in-law whispered to me with a grin, "The remodeling cost a bit. I believe the title to this house is under your name, Michelle. I'm sorry, but could you handle the payment?" Her chuckles carried not a hint of apology. "Ah, it's $80,000, she added, her smile deepening. "Remodeling cost. The title to this house. $80,000. The unexpected words felt like a punch to the head, and I felt my legs shaking. I couldn't even find the words to reply as I stared at my mother-in-law, who was laughing fearlessly. My husband, who was at the entrance, opened the living room door and sneaked in. The moment I saw him, my feet naturally headed toward him, holding a faint hope that he would surely be on my side. I relayed to my husband exactly what my mother-in-law had said, clinging to a desperate hope for his reaction. But all I received from him was a cold response. "Well, that's about right. Take care of it, will you?" That's right. That's the kind of man he is. When I collapsed from a stroke. That's right, that's the kind of man he is. When I collapsed from a stroke, he was more concerned about our living arrangements than my health. He's a man who will stop if his mother says green means stop and will go if she says red means go. A man who always thinks his mother is right. The discomfort and dissatisfaction I felt toward my husband escalated. Once it flooded, I was done. I thought from the bottom of my heart I would throw this family away. I understand now, George. I am going to divorce you. And mother-in-law, no, Cecilia, please handle the renovation costs on your own. After declaring this all at once, I turned my back on them and moved to leave the room as quickly as possible. But it seemed they weren't going to let me go so easily. I've been losing interest in you anyway, so it's no big deal. But remember, this house is in your name, Emma, so you have a responsibility to pay. That's right. Feel free to leave, but please settle your dues first. I was astonished at the two of them who selfishly made their claims. I couldn't help but let out a sigh. Surely if I turned around, I'd see their smug faces grinning in victory. I refused to look back, standing tall as I replied. You keep saying the house is in my name, George, but did you forget the ownership has been transferred to you? I revealed the truth, but they only laughed at me, believing I was lying to avoid paying. That's when I brought up how George had asked me to change the property's ownership when we got married, as he didn't want the house to be in his wife's name for appearance's sake. Since I didn't particularly care about the property title, I had immediately transferred it to his name. Upon hearing this, the laughter of the two who had been so complacent until now abruptly stopped, and I could feel the panic gradually setting in. I don't recall saying such a thing. There's no proof anyway. Anticipating this response, I turned back to face them, walked past them, and opened a drawer of a shelf from our old house. Let's see, it should be somewhere around here. Ah, here it is. This is the proof. I took out a document from the drawer where the property and the house ownership were listed and showed it in front of their faces. When I carefully pointed to the part that said the ownership was in George's name, my husband's face turned pale. That's fraud. I never thought you'd actually do it, and I definitely can't pay such a huge sum of $80,000. I was disgusted with my husband, who started yelling as soon as he realized the payment obligation was on him. Since a decent conversation seems impossible, let's communicate through lawyers from now on. Cecilia, your son seems to be in quite a pickle, so please take good care of him from now on. Beside my loud husband, I smiled at my mother-in-law, who was standing dazedly, and finally turned my back on them, leaving their home for good. After that, my husband called several times, but I chose to ignore him entirely, deciding to communicate formally through a lawyer. Given our already strained relationship and problems with my mother-in-law, the divorce was settled without any issues. Regarding the matter that my husband insistently shouted when I left, change of name is a fraud. It was decided that there was an agreement between us because it was changed when we got married 2 years ago. My lawyer assured me with a smile that this was neither fraud nor anything illegal. With that, all the uncertainty inside me was completely dispelled. It seemed that the cost of renovating that house was supposed to be paid in full by me as soon as I got discharged from a hospital. Wanting to applaud, I now appreciate the well-crafted spiteful act of pushing me into hell just after I had endured surgery and rehabilitation, and finally got discharged due to illness. In the end, since the house was in my husband's name, it was his duty to make the lump sum payment, and he ended up strangling himself. In addition, I was able to secure alimony after the successful divorce. My husband, who had been hit with a claim for a total amount that he could not possibly pay off, had either borrowed money from dangerous places or hadn't. While I was fighting with my husband and mother-in-law, I received an apology from my father-in-law, Bob, who had been hospitalized with a broken leg, saying, "I'm sorry for my wife and son's behavior." Of course, it didn't seem that Bob was involved in this matter. However, there's no denying that for 2 years after our marriage, he had ignored his wife and my cold husband. After briefly replying to Bob's message, I decided to cut all ties with that family and start a new life. Since then, my health has gradually improved, and I was able to return to work. When I was married, I used to draw illustrations while being mindful of my husband's gaze. But now I can immerse myself in it as much as I want, whenever I want. Originally, I was just drawing as a hobby, but now I get job offers from the social networking site where I post my illustrations, and I now spend more time drawing for work than for pleasure. Today, I'm heading to see an old farmhouse in a somewhat rural town. My current dream is to buy this old farmhouse with the alimony from my husband and my savings and to open an art studio. Today, I'm about to take the first step towards this dream. On the bus, as I gazed out at the scenery, I found myself recalling that day, the day I left the hospital that changed my life forever. The abundant natural scenery outside is the same as that day, but my feelings are clear and I'm excited about the new life that's about to begin. The leaves on the trees, illuminated by the sunlight, looked so bright that they dazzled. My name is Kathy, and ever since I was little, I loved my dad dearly. He was the kind of man who always put his family first and himself last. He made sure my brother and I never lacked anything and took care of my stay-at-home mom too. He would hand over his entire paycheck to her, never complaining even when he didn't have a dime to his name. Thanks to my dad, my brother and I lived fulfilling lives. I thought our family of 4 would continue to live this way forever. But life can be so cruel. Suddenly, I lost my dad, the man I loved so much. It was just when I was in my senior year of high school and my brother was in 8th grade. That day, like any other, Dad left for work as usual, but then he suddenly collapsed at his workplace and was rushed to the hospital. By the time my brother and I got to the hospital, Dad was already gone. Mom arrived an hour later. My brother and I were sobbing uncontrollably, but Mom was strangely calm. She was shocked by Dad's sudden death, sure, but she shed no tears. "Mom, what are we gonna do now? Dad's gone," I asked her. Mom was a stay-at-home wife, which meant she had no income. Without Dad, how could our family survive? But Mom didn't answer my question. "Mom, are you listening? Dad's dead." Then Mom let out a big sigh and bluntly said, "What's done is done. Can you stop crying so loud? It's giving me a headache." Wait, what? What did she say? What's done is done about Dad's death? Sure, no one could have predicted or prevented such a thing. But to talk about Dad, who supported us all these years, like that was just too cruel. For the first time, I felt a surge of disgust towards my mom. I had always felt that Mom was spoiled and overly reliant on Dad. But to maintain her indifference, even in such a situation, Mom laughed scornfully at my glaring face. "What are you glaring at? It's not like it's my fault he's dead." And so our nightmare began. As soon as Dad's funeral was over, Mom started bringing strange men into our home. We were living in a rented condominium, and the room that Dad used to use was taken over by one of these men. Our everyday life took a dramatic turn. Mom and her lover treated my brother and me like nuisances. They would raise their voices at us if anything didn't go their way. Mom just watched with a smirk, never scolding the man. The hellish situation went on for months, and my brother and I were at our breaking point. Mom had always managed all of Dad's salary, saving a portion of it in her own bank account while cutting down Dad's allowance. It seemed she was using that money to have fun with her lover. We couldn't take this life anymore. I had to change our situation for my brother's sake. With this in mind, I decided to look for a part-time job. I was ready to give up on college, planning to work immediately after high school. As I was contemplating all of this, a man claiming to be a lawyer showed up one day. "This was commissioned by your father," he said. Before his passing, the lawyer then pulled out Dad's will. Mom appeared taken aback by the lawyer's sudden visit, unaware of the truth he was about to unveil. The lawyer clarified the situation to us. Your father had realized that something was wrong with his health early on, but he believed that if he didn't work, the family would be in a bind. So he wanted to leave something behind for a rainy day. As the lawyer unsealed our father's will, he explained it in layman's terms. Your father intended to divide his $20 million fortune by giving $10 million to your mom and $5 million each to you kids. Upon hearing this, Mom eagerly addressed the lawyer. "So when do I get the money?" "As soon as all the official proceedings are complete. The funds will be transferred shortly." Without skipping a beat, Mom prepared a pen and signed the necessary documents. The talk was complex for us kids, but we decided to accept our father's legacy gratefully. A few days later, my brother and I made the decision to leave the house. I started to consider what would be essential for us living on our own, and what the bare minimum actions would be. If we were leaving the house, we needed to find a new place to live, but would anyone be willing to rent a property to high school students? While pondering, I remembered that the parents of a middle school friend owned an apartment. The next day, I visited their house, promptly explained the situation, and asked, "Since we have our father's legacy and I plan to start a part-time job, Could you introduce us to a good apartment? In response, my friend's parents proposed, since we can't legally lease to high school students, how about we rent you a room in our apartment? You just need to pay the monthly rent. Yes, I'd be grateful. Thank you so much. My friend's parents were worried until the end, but when they perceived my strong determination, they finally encouraged me, saying, "You can count on us anytime you need help." That night, I brought up the matter to Mom. "Mom, Sam and I are planning to leave the house soon." "What are you planning to do?" she asked. "We're going to live together, just the two of us." I suppose our affairs didn't matter to Mom in the least. Without even looking at me, Mom dismissed us nonchalantly. "Well, do as you please. I couldn't care less what happens to you two. It'll actually be better without you two around, so you won't get in the way of my time with him." At that moment, my barely lingering affection for Mom crumbled completely. "Okay, I understand. Thanks for everything, Mom." With a heavy dose of sarcasm towards Mom, I left the house I had lived in for years. Starting to live with my brother turned out to be way more challenging than I imagined. Early morning paper routes, then school, and a part-time job at the supermarket after returning home. I didn't want to touch the money left by our father, so I tried to cover living expenses with my part-time wage as much as possible. At the supermarket, they gave me the boxed meals scheduled for disposal. That became our dinner. I knew my brother, being a middle schooler, would want some fun, so I gave him a modest monthly allowance. "Here you go, Sam. This is your allowance for the month." "But you hardly spend anything on yourself," he said. "Don't worry about me. Having fun is an essential experience too, you know." Despite his reservations, I insisted on giving my brother his allowance. I felt guilty about the financial constraints he had to endure because of me, so I wanted to do at least the bare minimum for him. Our life continued like that for a while, and before we knew it, it was fall. The buzz among my classmates was all about where they were going to college. To me, those conversations felt like such a luxury, I couldn't think of anything else. But my thoughts were consumed with where I would work after graduation and how I would help my brother get to college. One day, I happened to have the day off from my part-time job. My brother and I were enjoying a leisurely lunch at home when the apartment doorbell rang. Who could it be? When I opened the door, there was Mom. "Mom," I said, surprised. "Don't you dare call me that. Now, where is your banking card?" "A banking card?" Mom suddenly barged in, demanding the banking card, and I was totally lost. She ignored my confusion and shouted at me to hurry up and hand it over. "Wait a minute, why so sudden?" I tried to ask, but she wouldn't listen. She even went so far as to march straight into the house, rummaging through the rooms. "Hey Mom, stop it." My brother tried to stop her, but she just pushed him aside with a curt, "Shut up." I rushed to my brother's side, pleading with Mom to stop. Eventually, she found the banking card in a drawer. After checking the untouched balance in the account, she smirked. "Oh, there's quite a bit left. You're just like me, doing so well. How admirable." Disgusted, I glared at her, and that must have irked her because she shoved me next. "What's with that look? Just do as I say. I'm your mother." She left with our banking cards. I felt so helpless and sank to the floor. Why, after all the hard work to get this far, does she have to ruin everything again? The peaceful life my brother and I had finally managed to grab. I worked so hard without even touching our father's inheritance, all for my brother's future. "Sis," my brother comforted me as I cried. I felt pathetic for not being able to protect my only brother. Just then, I remembered something, the one letter that the lawyer had given me when he visited a while back. He asked me to give it to you without letting Mom know. "Open this only if you're in trouble," he had said. The lawyer, seemingly aware of the situation with Mom, had discreetly handed me an envelope. Life with my brother had started right after, and in all the bustle, I completely forgot about it. I opened the letter from my deceased father and read its contents. It was an address. It was somewhere far away from where we lived, an area completely unknown to us. However, I figured there must be a reason my father left it. I decided to go to that place with my brother. We got on a plane, and then we took a taxi from the airport. What awaited us was a house with a grand gate, something you'd only see in movies or TV shows. "What is this gigantic house?" My brother seemed overwhelmed by the sheer size of the house. As we stood there, a burly man came out from inside. "Oh my, you've come." We found a letter from our father. Your address was in it," I explained. The man began to speak to someone on the phone. After a brief moment, the man changed his demeanor and said, "Please come in," inviting us into the mansion. In the great room to which we were guided, an elderly woman was sitting alone. Upon seeing us, she greeted us. "Kathy and Sam, right? Nice to meet you. I'm your grandmother." Grandmother. We were shocked and couldn't help but exclaim loudly. We had never heard any stories about our father's family, nor did we even know we had a grandmother. Not just that, but who would have thought that our father's childhood home would be such an impressive estate? "Since you've come, does that mean my son has passed away?" Her son, that is, our father. I gave a small nod to her. "Grandmother, interrupting me." Grandmother took out a large bag and handed it to me. "This is something your father left with me. He said if they ever come to visit, give this to them." When I opened the bag, it was packed with countless bundles of bills, the likes of which I'd never seen before. Ignoring our surprise, Grandmother began to explain. "We had a falling out a long time ago, and for a while, we didn't talk at all. But about a year and a half ago, he suddenly showed up and left this bag." According to her, her father's family, in other words, our grandmother, was part of a long-established gang. Our father had refused to take over the family business and had cut ties with his grandmother after a big fight. When we heard it was a gang, it all made sense. That grand entrance. Of course, it was a surprise to learn that our father's family was involved in a gang. This turn of events was just as astonishing. Perhaps our father knew about Mom's cheating habits. Even when it came to the inheritance, there is a limit to what we, as minors, could do. The allocation of the money was likely just for formality's sake. What our father really wanted to leave us was that letter with Grandmother's address on it. Our father had been planning this in case anything happened to us. I was moved to tears by our father's kindness. I took the time to explain everything, how he had been treated poorly by Mom and her lover, and how Mom had taken our father's inheritance. After hearing everything, Grandmother told us, "You don't need to give up on life because of your mother. I'll get that money back for you. You two need to live your lives with gratitude." We took the bag of money our father left us and returned to our apartment. With this money, I could let my brother go to college as much as he wanted. In addition, our grandmother even promised to pay for my college tuition. Thanks to our father and grandmother, my once abandoned hope of attending college was fulfilled. "I'm so happy for you," my younger brother said, giving me a warm smile. He too must have been holding up for a long time. "Sam, it's thanks to you sticking with me that we got through this." "Thank you," I said, and he shyly sniffled. A few days later, Grandmother visited our apartment, returning the banking card Mom had taken from us. She had used one of her employees to locate Mom and get our card back. Indeed, quite the gangster. Thinking about it was a little scary, but amusing at the same time. "I made that woman promise she won't bother you two ever again. You can live in peace now," Grandmother said. "Thank you, Grandmother." "But how?" I asked. "That's not something children need to worry about. From now on, live your lives to the fullest," she said before leaving, giving us those encouraging words. There's a postscript to the story. Mom's lover. Actually, he was after Mom's money. When Grandmother took back the bank card, he promptly dumped Mom. Having exhausted our father's inheritance, Mom is now desperately searching for a job. A woman who has been a housewife all her life from now on will undoubtedly be challenging. However, thanks to my grandmother, peace returned to our lives. I passed the entrance exams for my first choice university and am still working part-time, trying to avoid using our father's money as much as possible. I later entered the workforce and my brother started college. Now that we've reached this point, we're safe. Childhood was long and tough, but there were kind adults watching over us. Our father's lawyer, the couple who rented us the apartment, our gangster grandmother, and our beloved father. Dad, we're off. Every morning, my brother and I pay respects to our father's portrait. We'll keep supporting each other, so please watch over us from heaven, Dad. Somehow, it felt like Dad's portrait was smiling. On our way to a camping trip with my husband Joseph and his parents, we stopped at a rest area off the highway. As I got out of the RV, Joseph suddenly threw these shocking words at me. "You're not our family. Go home now." "What? Excuse me," I stammered, unable to comprehend the sudden change in his demeanor. He seemed like a completely different person from the considerate husband I knew. Seeing my surprised face, the three of them smirked, and Joseph began to drive the RV away. This can't be happening, I thought. They wouldn't leave me here in the middle of nowhere. Panicking, I made a phone call only to receive a jaw-dropping response from my mother-in-law. "You really thought you could come along with us? What nerve you've got. Please don't say that and come back. I was looking forward to our trip," I pleaded. "Well, the highway is a one-way street. You can't just turn around. Besides, you're not part of our family. You're just my daughter-in-law. Know your place. By now, we're going to have fun without you." The call abruptly ended as I stood there dumbfounded, watching the RV become smaller and smaller until it disappeared from sight. The words that I wasn't a part of their family pierced my heart and ached intensely. This was terrible. They had me prepare everything, and then a wave of bitterness and heartache washed over me. Feeling helpless, I had no choice but to call a taxi and go back home. I'm Allison, 31 years old. I got married 2 years ago to my husband Joseph, who is the same age as me. He bought a house for us when I hesitated to live with his parents. Although it's within a stone's throw from my in-laws' house, it's better than living with them. However, they are free-spirited people who would suddenly ask me to do a huge amount of shopping or even have me clean their kitchen dirty with dishes and greasy from cooking oil. I cannot deny that it feels like harassment sometimes, but Joseph always tells me, "I'm sorry for the trouble my parents are causing you," so I keep telling myself it's time to endure. His parents are both very concerned about appearances. They treat me surprisingly well in front of others, so I'm careful not to say anything negative about them lest I become the villain. However, I have been hoping for the day when I could understand my in-laws better, but being left behind by my husband was too much of a shock for me to recover from for a while. The discussion about going camping occurred a week ago when we visited his parents on our off day. When I was asked to clean the storage room, I found a lantern. "Do you guys go camping?" I asked. "Huh? What are you talking about?" my mother-in-law responded. "I found a lantern in the storage room." "Oh, that. We bought it in case of a power outage. We had completely forgotten about it." "I see. My father loves camping, and I used to go with him often, so I wondered if you guys also liked camping." When I talked about my father being a camping enthusiast and owning an RV, my husband's eyes lit up with excitement. "That's amazing. I've always wanted to try it." "Then it's decided. Let's go on our first family camping trip next week for 1 night and 2 days. Allison, please rent out an RV. My father cherishes his RV and takes care of it whenever he has free time. I'm not sure if he would lend it to us." "Now it's your job to convince him. You better beg him to lend it to us." "Got it." When I hesitated due to the sudden request, my husband pleaded with me, "It's our first time camping, and we don't know what we need, so it would be safer to borrow your dad's RV. Besides, I want to please my parents with a fun camping trip. Please, Allison." I had no choice but to agree when asked like that. I immediately went to my father's place and explained the situation. To my surprise, he gladly agreed. "Really? Is it okay?" "Of course. I thought you would refuse because you always polished and took care of it in your spare time. If it's for you, Allison, I'm happy to lend it, and I'm touched by your desire to please Joseph's parents. So take this whole set of camping gear so you can enjoy your first camping trip. If you're a beginner, this and this would be good." My father selected easy-to-use equipment for beginners while explaining various things. I was more than happy to know how much my father cared about me, and my heart was warmed. It would be great if this camping trip could help me get closer with my in-laws. All right, I'll work hard to prepare. I reserved a campground where we could use power comfortably, and there was a hot spring nearby. When I told my husband and in-laws about my father's RV and camping gear, they were delighted. "We're so lucky to have you, Allison. I'm so excited, I can't wait," Joseph exclaimed. "I'm glad you're happy," I replied, feeling hopeful about the trip. On the day of the trip, I got into the RV driven by my husband, pounding with anticipation. After driving for a while, my mother-in-law started being demanding again. "Joseph, I'm thirsty. Can we stop at the interchange?" she asked. "Mom, I brought some drinks. You can pick any one from here," Joseph responded. None of them really appealed to me. "As my daughter-in-law, you should know my tastes," she snapped. I'm sorry," I stammered. As soon as I got out of the car at the interchange to buy my mother-in-law a Dr. Pepper she had requested, my husband spoke shocking words to me in a cold tone, unlike his usual self. "Allison, you're not a part of our family, so go home now." "Excuse me. What? What suddenly got into you?" I asked, unable to comprehend the sudden change in his demeanor. He seemed like a completely different person. As I looked shocked and unable to understand what had just been said, The three of them laughed, and the RV started moving again, leaving me behind. They left me here in the middle of nowhere. Is this some kind of joke? I thought, panicked. I made a call only to receive a shocking response from my mother-in-law. You thought you could really come with us? What a brazen woman you are. You're not a part of our family. Be aware of that. Bye. We'll enjoy a good family time without you. I stood still, dumbfounded, staring at the abruptly disconnected call. How dare they? They had me prepare everything and then left me out. What was Joseph thinking? A surge of bitterness and sorrow overwhelmed me, but unable to deal with these emotions, I called a taxi and went home. The next day, my husband and in-laws came back from the camp and were excitedly talking about their fun experience. They didn't even bother to apologize for leaving me behind. As I started questioning them about the previous day's events, I received an astonishing response. We did it to discipline you as my wife, Joseph said. That's right, Allison. You never understand your place as our daughter-in-law, my mother-in-law added. But there's no need to abandon me on the highway for that, I protested. We had to go this far because you wouldn't get it otherwise, my father-in-law chimed in. We need to properly discipline this failure of a wife before we start living together. Upon hearing the word living together from my mother-in-law, I was startled. I feared that discussions were happening behind my back without my knowledge. What do you mean by living together? I haven't heard anything about this. My parents' place is getting old and is at its limit. I've bought a house where we can invite Dad and Mom to live with us. From next year, we'll be living together, so I'm going to be stricter with you. Be prepared, Joseph declared. I was stunned to hear this was my husband's true intention, deciding such a major thing without consulting me at all. I couldn't believe it. My trembling anger was seemingly insignificant to the three of them. What's worse, after borrowing the RV, they didn't even bother to refill the gas or thank my father. Allison, why are you just standing around? Hurry up and return the RV to your dad. After cleaning the interior, wash the car, then return it to your father. We don't want to be seen as thoughtless, Joseph ordered. Looking at the car interior littered with trash, I was thoroughly disappointed in them, not only ignoring me but also disrespecting my father's kindness. Unforgivable. After cleaning and washing the RV and filling up the gas tank, I returned it. Upon arrival, my father greeted me with a full smile. How was it? Did you enjoy the trip? I wasn't considered part of their family, so I didn't go, I confessed. What? My father's smiling face transformed into one of furious anger as I told him about being abandoned at the highway interchange and how my husband decided on living with his parents without consulting me. I allowed it for you, Allison, and those people did such horrible things to discipline you. What a joke. We will not let this slide. I won't let them have their way, Allison. We're hitting back at them. How? I asked, curious about his plan. I have a secret plan. I also have a perfect place for camping. Listen carefully. Your amazing dad is sure to work, I thought, feeling a glimmer of hope. Keeping the wisdom my father bestowed upon me in my heart, I returned to my in-laws' house, where my husband and his parents were still excited about yesterday's events. Now was the perfect chance to lure them. I smiled lightly, carefully keeping my emotions hidden, and spoke to the three of them in a gentle tone. There is an even more amazing place than where we went yesterday. The autumn leaves are incredibly beautiful right now. Why not do a full-scale camping trip? Instead of staying in an RV, why not pitch a tent and enjoy a barbecue while looking at the scenery? At night, you can see a sky full of stars. Really? Where? Joseph asked, intrigued. It's a secret spot that I don't want to tell anyone else. Can I come to fulfill my role as your wife? I asked sweetly. That's good. It's gonna be fun, my mother-in-law said, her interest piqued. It's in a secluded area, so I'll drive. I'll act right as your wife and as my in-law's daughter-in-law. So can I join you guys as expected? My husband and his parents were overjoyed and agreed for me to accompany them. We decided to go camping again the following weekend. Just like always, they dumped all the preparations on me, and their pestering to teach me discipline only got worse each day. I carried out my secret plan and meticulously arranged for my revenge. The day of our trip arrived. I borrowed an RV from my father, drove to a remote campsite, and my husband and in-laws were thrilled. Wow, it's like a private site, they exclaimed, looking around restlessly, excited about the new environment. We'll go for a walk and enjoy the scenery. Allison, set up our tent. Understood. Enjoy your walk, I replied, seeing off the joyous trio and beginning to prepare the camp. About 30 minutes later, my husband called in a panic. "Allison, we're lost. I can't find your dad's RV." "I'm on my way home with it," I calmly replied. "What? What do you mean?" he asked, confused. "Don't worry. I left the bare minimum for you to enjoy a real camp. This was the plan my father devised. He suggested you experience some wild camping, where you would have to get everything yourselves, like living on a deserted island rather than a convenient campsite with electricity and a hotel resort nearby. You better set up your tent early and look for wood to start your fire. I know you guys have no lighter, so you'll have to start the fire yourselves. I've left the pot so you can at least cook rice. You left us behind. You were the ones who said that I, as a wife, wasn't part of the family and shouldn't go camping with you. So I took you up to the campsite and tearfully went home. That's what you wanted to do, right?" I said, my voice filled with righteous anger. My husband was momentarily silenced. "Enjoy camping with just your family," I added. I was about to hang up when my husband, in a rage, began yelling at me. "Don't be ridiculous. If you don't come back now, I'll get a divorce from you." "All right, let's get divorced. You'll regret saying that." Being abandoned on the highway, finding my father's cherished RV filled with trash. I have had enough of living with your parents who do nothing but disrespect me. You're the ones who will regret it. "Stupid woman," my husband shouted before abruptly hanging up. Utterly disgusted, I started driving. I was actually nearby, but I lost all will to go pick them up. After a while, I received another call from my husband. His tone had completely changed and I could hear his confusion and trembling voice over the phone. "I can't set up the tent no matter what. It's starting to rain, and my parents are getting angry at me. It's getting cold too. What should I do?" "Regretting already? That was quick. Why don't you look up how to set up a tent on YouTube?" "Forget the tent. My father pulled it too hard and ripped it apart." "Allison, you've had your fun. Now fix your attitude and come pick us up." "I'm not coming. If you walk for about an hour, you'll reach a broad road. If you're not going to camp, then come down here with your stuff." "What? Just because I'm asking you nicely doesn't mean you can get all high and mighty." Realizing this was my husband's true nature, my feelings for him had entirely cooled. All I could do was sigh. "Screw this. I'm going to dump all this useless stuff. Just wait till we get home. Someone owns that place. It's private property. If you dump anything here, you'll be sued for illegal dumping. There's a sign that clearly states no littering." "I don't care." My husband, speaking with a strong tone, didn't seem to believe that I was serious about the divorce. I had to show him the reality. "After our divorce, I'll be demanding compensation for the emotional distress from all the harassment you've done to me." "What? Divorce? Is it?" "I'm serious. Our conversation from the time I was left behind on the highway is recorded on my dad's RV dash cam, so you can't deny it. Not just that, I've also recorded the conversations when you were harassing me afterward. Let's calm down. We don't have any savings because we've been paying our mortgage. If you leave, I won't have anyone to cook and clean for us, which will be a problem. You should think before you speak. I'm not your maid. If you don't agree to the divorce, I'll take it to court. It's going to become a big deal, and everyone in the family will know." My husband, always conscious of others' judgment, got silent. I could hear his parents fussing around in the background, but it no longer mattered to me. After that, my husband attempted to say something with a preface of but then the call abruptly cut off. Soon after, I started receiving multiple calls from my in-laws, but I ignored them completely. After a while, the calls stopped ringing, so their phones must have died out of battery. My father's revenge plan was a huge success. On my way home, I picked up the divorce papers, filled them out, and left them on the table before returning to my sweet childhood home, where my kind father lived. For some reason, my husband and in-laws took 3 hours to descend the mountain that would normally take only 1 hour. You should have used Google Maps instead of bothering me with calls. How foolish, I thought. My husband, desperate to have me stay with him, came to my parents' house, his anger apparent. "Allison, get out here now. I'll teach you a lesson. If you have something to say, talk to my father. He's pretty upset, so it might not end well for you," I replied calmly. My huge and intimidating father stood in front of my husband at the entrance. He went off at my husband and shut him down. Moreover, they left their tent and camping gear in the mountains and were sued for illegal dumping by the owner of the mountain. The person who filed the lawsuit was my father, who had inherited the land from my grandfather. There were a lot of trespassing and dumping incidents happening regularly on the land, so security cameras were installed, and it was clear who was responsible for the mess. I wondered what kind of punishment would be handed down. After finalizing our divorce, I demanded and received $1 million each from my husband and in-laws for the emotional distress they caused me. Unable to pay off their mortgage, my husband's house was foreclosed and he now lives with his parents in their leaky house, living modestly as a family of 3. No use crying over spilled milk, as they say. I returned to the company I used to work at before getting married and am regaining the lifestyle that suits me. Next month, I plan to go camping with my parents, and I'm sure that I will have a blast then. Is this seriously my family? Such a question was forced upon me. They always showed their good side with smiles on their faces, never revealing what they were really thinking. It didn't take long for me to grow to dislike such a family. My name is Samantha, a 28-year-old housewife. I got married a year ago and have been living with my family in my childhood home. This situation arose due to 3 reasons. The first is that my father's company went bankrupt and he couldn't find a new job. The second reason is that my older brother, Ryan, is jobless. Being the eldest son and without a job is unacceptable, and it seems like my father is putting all his bets on my husband, Alex. Ryan claims to be a YouTuber, but from our parents' perspective, nothing has changed. He is just as jobless as before. The third reason is that my mother has terminal cancer. She was given 2 years to live when my marriage was decided, and it all happened in quick succession. My father asked my husband Alex to live together. Alex had a close relationship with my father, often drinking together, so he didn't hesitate to agree. Given my mother's situation, I also agreed with the arrangement and was grateful to Alex. I wanted to take care of my parents as much as possible, but after a year of living together since our marriage, I started to get annoyed with my brother Ryan. It's been a while. Why are you just a housewife even though dad is jobless? Isn't it strange that you're not working? Do you realize what's going on with mom? What would happen if I didn't handle the house chores, the laundry, and meals for you, Ryan? I am the one doing it. You sound so sarcastic, yet you dare to speak to me in such a way. Besides, I work from home. Work from home? Oh, you mean some penny-earning side job? That's not called work. I don't want to hear this from you, Ryan. Go find a real job, about it. I had no reason to be spoken to like that, and it infuriated me. His accusations made me feel as if I were entirely in the wrong, cornering me. When I consulted with Alex, he merely said, he must be stressed. Just ignore him, showing no understanding of my situation. I was worried about my mom and was doing everything I could for her, so my brother's behavior only added to my annoyance. I couldn't help but wonder if he even cared about our mom at all. His cold-heartedness seemed apparent. I started to feel more and more stressed. Hey, it seems like my workload is going to increase. If that happens, I won't have any time for myself, so I might not be able to go to our usual spa visits. Well, I don't mind that, but it would be a problem if you couldn't handle things at home. After all, we've got to take care of my mother-in-law. I get it. I won't neglect my responsibilities. Do you need some money or something? No, that's not it. But can you come with me for the weekend grocery shopping? If I shop for the whole week at once, I can free up some time for work. If you're really determined, huh? All right, we'll drive there. I didn't want to waste time, so I decided to buy a week's worth of groceries on the weekend to avoid multiple shopping trips. Then an incident occurred. You thief, you've stolen my money. Suddenly, my husband accused me of theft. I had no idea what he was talking about, let alone what money he was referring to. He had decided that it was me, his face turning beet red with anger. I couldn't understand why he would think it was me. I was the one who should be angry. It's not right to blame others. Was it stolen from your wallet? Don't play dumb. The $3,000 I put in the drawer is gone. $3,000? Yes, return it now, and we'll forget this happened. Hold on, why am I the one to blame? I didn't even know you were keeping such a large sum in the drawer. But you said you were going to increase your workload recently. I thought it was suspicious. I can't believe you're that kind of woman. No, you're getting it all wrong. Please believe me. I'm sorry, but I can't trust you anymore. Don't mess with me. Give it back. No, I said give it back. Enough. If you're going to doubt me that much, then go ahead and doubt. Get out, criminal. I'll leave by the end of today. I lost my temper and retorted harshly. Treated like a criminal by my family, I was driven out of the house. However, the following day, I received a frantic call from my brother Ryan. Mom's in a terrible state. What? As soon as she found out you left, she's been panicking and screaming. You need to come back and calm her down. I won't go back to that house anymore. I'll leave Mom in your hands, Ryan. You've never done anything before, so it's about time you stepped up. With a hardened heart, I responded in such a manner, but honestly, I didn't want to do this. I was torn between my pride and my concern for Mom. Cut the crap. This is too much for me. She only listens to you, so just come back. Even your husband, Alex, doesn't know what to do. I don't care. You reap what you sow. I won't go back, and I'm getting a divorce. I don't care about that. It doesn't concern me whatever happens to you. If that's the case, you should take Mom with you. This is Mom and Dad's house. Why should I be the one to leave? If someone's leaving, it should be you, Ryan. If you're working, you should be independent. The oldest son, this place is mine. There's no way I'm leaving. You're so shameless. Have you ever considered Mom's feelings? She's currently battling an illness. I'll come back, but only if you leave, Ryan. Those are my terms. I can't do that. It's obviously impossible. Stop being so selfish and come back already. Even in such a situation, Ryan was still stubborn and selfish. Meanwhile, Alex hadn't been in touch, and it seemed like he had the nerve to continue staying at the house. Perhaps feeling awkward, he'd only come home to sleep and ate all his meals outside. My leaving seemed to have caused the family to fall apart. I didn't realize our family was so fragile. Then, after a month had passed, Alex finally contacted me. Hey, how long are you going to sulk? Get back here already. Your mother-in-law is unmanageable, and it's becoming a real issue. I will proceed with a divorce once that's settled and you've left. Of course, I'll come back. You're really thinking about that? Obviously, I've been treated like a criminal and kicked out of my own home. That was just a heated exchange, wasn't it? You doubted your own family. I feel like I failed in life. There was no trust. Don't be childish. It's a fact that the money is gone. Who else could it be but you? It's ridiculous to suspect me without any evidence. Oh, stop your nagging. Give back the money. If you return it, everything will be settled. You're the one being foolish. Enough with the insults. It's a fact that you wanted money at that time. It all adds up. It could only have been you, criminal. Enough. Wanna know why I was trying to earn money? Like I care. You probably wanted to buy some worthless jewelry or something, right? You couldn't wait to get your hands on that money. What's tomorrow? Ha! I can't believe it. You don't even remember your own birthday. Oh, my birthday. Wait, don't tell me. That's right, just as you guessed. I thought it was about time you got a new suit, and since you said you wanted a custom-made one, I was saving money for it. But it wasn't enough. Fool. You know custom-made suits are expensive, and we can't afford it. That's why I wanted to gift it to you so badly. And yet, you accused me of stealing the money, and that hurt me. Wait a minute. I didn't know. Forgive me. It's not something to get so angry about, right? I can't forgive you. The most important thing is missing, so it's over. I'm sorry, but all I can think of is divorce. That's why I've asked a lawyer to handle it. Stop that. I want to settle this quickly and go back to my mom's. I don't want to. I won't get a divorce and I won't leave this house. We're supposed to inherit this house. Huh. My decision to divorce was further cemented by the fact that Alex's attitude hadn't changed. If Alex continues with this mindset, the divorce is likely to get messy. However, I remained unshaken. As I was thinking about all this, my brother reached out to me again. Cut it out. You need to come back now. No way. Why did you keep quiet? What? Mom spilled the beans. She said you've been paying the mortgage on this house. Moreover, you've been covering all the living expenses too. Isn't it strange that you didn't know about it, and that job wouldn't be enough to cover the expenses? But we can't pay the mortgage. What are you talking about? You have a job, but you haven't put a single cent into the house. You should be the one to pay it. Well, yes, but I bought a computer, a high-end one. It was expensive. What? You bought a computer? Because I needed it for my job. What else could I do? Oh, so you're making enough to buy such a thing? Then you should be able to pay the house mortgage, right? I told you I can't pay it. Your husband isn't contributing to the living expenses either. What's going on? Until now, I've been covering those with my money, but now that Alex is eating out every meal, there's no spare money. So what are we supposed to do? Hurry up and figure something out. If we don't pay the mortgage here, we'll have nowhere to live. What about mom and dad? I had reached the end of my patience with my brother's selfish thinking. Just stop it already. Who cares about your video game streaming? You have less than 100 subscribers. The number of views is in the single digits. You won't make any money that way. Nobody watches it because it's not interesting. How do you know that? I just searched for a video game streaming and it came right up. Wearing a mask and sunglasses doesn't make you unrecognizable. How did you buy a computer with that? Don't tell me you. I didn't steal any money from your husband. How do you know about that? Something's fishy. Well, that's right. I overheard you two talking. What? Nobody was at home when we had this big argument. You were out, which is unusual for you. That's a misunderstanding. You got the dates wrong. It's a mix-up. Stop messing around. You're the one who stole it, right? If you don't confess, I'm going to file a police report. Wait, a police report? No, please stop. I just found some money and I just borrowed it. I swear I'll pay it back. Don't give me that crap. I will never forgive you. Get out of my house now. I'll be back home tomorrow. And if you're not gone by then, I'm calling the cops. Don't say things like that. We're siblings, we're family. Can't things just stay the way they've always been? Don't try to smooth talk your way out of this. I will never forgive you. Just remember that. Leave before I get back tomorrow. You've been warned. Don't make decisions without me. I'm your older brother. Cut me some slack, please. Without responding to my brother, I just hung up the phone. It seems like he kept calling like a madman after that, but I turned my phone off and ignored all of it. The next day in the morning, I returned home. I am home. My mother rushed to greet me. Mom, you're back. I'm so glad. I never realized just how important you are to us, Samantha. I'm so sorry. Hold on. It's not your fault, Mom. As we were talking in the living room, my brother Ryan emerged from his room, and then he uttered unbelievable words. So you finally came back. Here's the details for the long repayment. Make sure to transfer it today. Also, I've got a tab running at the delivery place, so you can take care of that too. It's your fault for running off like this. Reflect on your actions. What the hell are you talking about? Stop messing around. I told you to leave. I will call the cops. You're throwing your life away over just $3,000. What $3,000? Don't tell me you. Don't whine just because I borrowed a little. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Big deal? You steal my money then say I'm making a big deal? That's not right, is it? Can I get it back? I don't remember lending it to you. You living here on my generosity shouldn't be so bold. We're family. It's okay, right? No, it's not okay. Give it back. Are you sure you want to go on like this? You might not be able to live here anymore. Seeing Alex and my brother arguing, my father stood up. No way. My mild-mannered father. Enough. Both of you, get out. This house is my house, and currently, it's Samantha who's paying the mortgage. I won't give it to anyone. I may be the eldest son of this house, but why is my sister taking over? You're only the eldest son in name. What have you done? You gonna shut in, playing games all the time. You never got a job, just living off the money I earned, right? You're over 40. Grow up. Get out. That's too much. Isn't it cruel to tell a man with no money to leave? I've been saying this for a long time. This isn't a new issue. You could sell that computer you have. You're not even working. Wait a minute. When I say get out, that goes for you too. What? But I haven't done anything. Haven't done anything. Who drove Samantha out, treating her like a criminal? A marriage is built on trust. Once it's broken, it's impossible to stay a family. I'm sorry. I apologize. But the one who stole was your son Ryan, wasn't it? Don't blame just me. You got close to me pretending to be friends, planning to inherit all of my assets, right? The moment I lost my job when the company went bankrupt, you treated me coldly because I'm a poor father with no money, right? How terrible. What a horrible person. I don't want to see your face. Now, get out. Don't mess with me. I was stunned by my father's words. Perhaps the sudden action of my father was the result of him reaching his limit. The divorce with Alex was successfully processed, and it ended abruptly. It felt refreshing as I thought it would be more complicated. But after that, Alex contacted me multiple times. Apparently, the reason for our divorce had become the talk of his workplace and he couldn't stand it, so he quit. He needs to realize that relying on other people's money won't get him anywhere. and my brother seems to be living in poverty, working a cleaning job at the station. A late employment indeed. As for me, I have no choice but to do my best, hoping for my mother to live as long as possible. Our family is restarting with the three of us, and our bright home life has returned. Teresa, when are you ever going to leave this house? It's quite embarrassing to have a shut-in NEET around here. Have you planned your move yet? I'll be out of here by today. I can't stand the sight of you, Lenny, anyway, I replied. It was clear to anyone that Lenny, my sister-in-law who ridiculed me with a smirk, was trying to take over our house. However, there was a reason I decided to move out and let her have it. I had a firm belief that Lenny would not be able to live in this house for long. My name is Teresa, and I live with my parents and Lenny, my brother's wife. My brother was assigned to work overseas shortly after getting married, and Lenny firmly refused to live abroad. So she ended up living in our house shamelessly, despite being in the so-called newlywed stage and living separately from my brother. I remember well the day Lenny came to our house. She brought a lot of luggage with her and said without any remorse, "Edwin has gone overseas, so his room is vacant, right? I've decided to live there." My parents and I were baffled when Lenny showed up without any prior discussion. When we called my brother to ask for an explanation, he was also surprised by Lenny's actions. Though my brother, who had just been assigned overseas, did respond, it was ultimately up to my parents and me, who were in direct contact with Lenny, to have the discussion. After getting married, Lenny was supposed to live in the house where my brother lived alone. However, when we asked why she suddenly came to our house, Lenny said the room was too small. I had been to my brother's room, and it didn't seem too small, but Lenny had already unilaterally terminated the lease of my brother's room. Since her parents lived far away and our house was conveniently located for her to get to work, she insisted on living in our house. Naturally, my parents were angry about Lenny's outrageous behavior, but Lenny was smart. Edwin has gone overseas and I'm lonely too. Of course, I plan to contribute financially since I'll be living here. I'll also do my best with housework, so please let me stay in this house, Lenny pleaded. My parents couldn't refuse. I think one of the reasons my parents couldn't strongly reject Lenny was for my brother's sake. My parents didn't seem to mind living with Lenny, even though it had started suddenly. They were angry about her coming without any discussion, but Lenny was doing housework, as she said, going to work, and paying rent to my parents. However, I was nothing but dissatisfied. For some reason, Lenny had made me her enemy. "Oh, Teresa, you're as unattractive as ever today," she said as soon as she saw me when I came out of my room in the morning. I don't think my face is attractive at all, but I was naturally surprised when she suddenly said such a thing. "Teresa, aren't you ashamed to be a shut-in all the time? Edwin is so respectable, going on an overseas assignment, and my in-laws have earned enough to live in such a large house, while you, Teresa, are just a NET playing at home all the time. I would be too ashamed to stay in such a house if I were you." Today, my parents were at work, and Lenny seemed to be off. Is she assuming I won't tell our parents about her nasty words? No need to feel embarrassed. I'm not an NET, I answered, laughing internally at her absurdity. Sure, my job requires me to be at home a lot, but that doesn't mean I don't work. When is Teresa ever going to leave this house? It's quite embarrassing to have a shut-in NET around. Have you planned your move yet? I'll be out of here by today. I can't stand the sight of you, Lenny, anyway, I replied, my voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath. Lenny, my sister-in-law, ridiculed me with a smirk. It was clear she was trying to take over our house. However, I had a reason for moving out and letting her have it. I firmly believed that Lenny wouldn't last long in this house. My name is Teresa, and I live with my parents and Lenny, my brother's wife. Shortly after they married, my brother was assigned to work overseas, and Lenny refused to join him. So she shamelessly moved into our house, despite being newlyweds. I remember well the day Lenny arrived. She brought a lot of luggage and said, "Edwin has gone overseas, so his room is vacant, right? I've decided to live there." My parents and I were baffled by her audacity. When we called my brother for an explanation, he was just as surprised. Ultimately, it was up to my parents and me to deal with Lenny directly. Lenny was supposed to live in the house my brother had rented, but she claimed it was too small and unilaterally terminated the lease. Since her parents lived far away and our house was conveniently located for her job, she insisted on moving in with us. Naturally, my parents were angry about Lenny's outrageous behavior, but Lenny was clever. Edwin is overseas and I'm lonely. I'll contribute financially and help with housework. Please let me stay, she pleaded. For my brother's sake, my parents couldn't refuse her. While my parents didn't mind Lenny staying, I was dissatisfied. Lenny had made me her enemy for some unknown reason. "Oh, Teresa, you're as unattractive as ever today," she said as soon as she saw me that morning. Her words stung, but I managed to keep my composure. "Teresa, aren't you ashamed to be a shut-in all the time? Edwin is on an overseas assignment, and my in-laws have earned enough to live in this large house, while you, Teresa, are just a NET playing at home. I'd be too ashamed to stay here if I were you." My parents were at work, and Lenny was off. Did she think I wouldn't tell our parents about her nasty words? "I'm not an NET," I replied, laughing internally at her absurdity. My sincere answer triggered a burst of laughter from Lenny. "Oh, come on, Teresa. Your brother's a successful man, and I work for a prestigious company. Even your parents are respected employees. I understand you might feel inferior, but there's no need to lie." "I'm not lying. I'm an influencer," I retorted. "An influencer? Please stop making me laugh. As if someone as plain as you could be an influencer. That's a job for gorgeous models," she scoffed, brushing her elegantly curled hair off her shoulder and ignoring my protests as she shoved past me. As she strode away, a heavy cloud of her perfume lingered in the air. "When will you finally move out, Teresa? It's so embarrassing to have a shut-in NET in the house. Have you found a new place yet?" She stopped mid-stride, turning around with a malicious grin. "I'll give you an allowance, Teresa. You must be in dire need of money, right? It's only fair for all the housework you do." Laughing softly, she pulled a few $10 bills from her wallet and threw them onto the floor. "Well, see you," she said, leaving the house. Her dismissive attitude got under my skin. I was frustrated with Lenny and disappointed with my brother's lack of discernment. Did they really think I would stay silent after such provocation? Lenny might have seen me as a quiet and meek sister-in-law, but I wasn't the type to just sit back and take it. I picked up the strewn money, opened the door to Lenny's room without her permission, and threw it inside. She had a lot of nerve acting so high and mighty over a few tens of dollars. Luckily for me, I wasn't strapped for cash. I had planned to relax today, but now I had other plans. After tidying up and finishing my work, I started packing. I couldn't stand living under the same roof as Lenny any longer. I decided to move in with my boyfriend, Nathan. We'd been discussing marriage, and he was understanding when I explained the situation. Meanwhile, I made a call to a certain place in the morning. Lenny had always looked down on me from the moment she came to greet us as a prospective wife. She probably needed to assert her dominance over someone to feel alive. By the time I finished my tasks, my parents returned home. I didn't mention anything about Lenny, choosing instead to join them for dinner, a meal I had prepared. Lenny, who claimed to be out with friends, hadn't returned yet and wouldn't be home for dinner. I decided not to tell my parents about Lenny's behavior just yet, waiting for the right moment. Lenny was in for a surprise, and I planned to hit her with it at the worst possible moment. "I'm moving in with Nathan starting today. I'll be out of here by tonight," I announced. "That's quite sudden. Nathan's okay with it?" my parents asked. "Yep," he agreed, "and we're thinking about getting married soon." "Well, as long as it's fine by him. Just make sure to let him know we said hi." I broke the news to my worried parents, finished washing the dishes with my melancholic mom, and then picked up my packed belongings and headed out of my room. Right on cue, there stood Lenny, dolled up in heavy makeup. Lenny's grin stretched across her face as if she had spotted her prey. "When will you finally leave this house, Teresa? It's so embarrassing to have a shut-in NET like you around. Is your moving day coming soon?" "I'll be gone today. Trust me, I'm as eager to get away from you as you are to see me gone," I replied directly. Lenny's expression twisted in response to my words. She glared at me, her ugly face a sight to behold. No offense to my brother, but I could do without a sister-in-law like her. The next time we'd meet, I'd be ready to serve her a dose of revenge. "Well, excuse me then," I said, bidding Lenny farewell. I said goodbye to my parents, who were relaxing in front of the television downstairs, and left the house. Nathan had told me I probably wouldn't need to deal with Lenny again, but I loved my brother and couldn't just stand by knowing he was being duped by her. "Thanks for your concern, but Lenny needs to be completely ousted from our house," I told him. A few days after I left home, I got a call from Mom. "You gave us such a shock by suddenly sending that letter. Just come home and explain. We've already informed your brother," she said, "but he can't make it back right away, so we'll video call him. We've also asked Lenny to take off from work, so hurry back, my mom said over the phone. Okay, I responded. After texting Nathan that I was heading to my parents' house, I left. When I arrived at the family house after several days, the tension was palpable. As I approached the living room, Lenny's cries became louder. When I opened the door, Lenny was hunched over in front of my parents, seated on the sofa. I could feel her glaring at me. Teresa, this is terrible. Why would you send these pictures? Lenny pointed to a series of photos sprawled across the coffee table. They showed Lenny with various men in different locations, some with arms linked, hands held, and other intimate poses. The sender, as Lenny indicated, was, of course, me. Private investigators can be quite useful, I thought. The morning I left home, I had contacted a private investigator to check if my sister-in-law was cheating, transferred the money, and that was it. From just that, such indisputable evidence was procured. You're the terrible one. What do you mean by doing whatever you want just because I'm not there? My brother, connected via video call, shouted. His face on the screen was beet red from anger. Lenny cried out to my brother, but I was lonely. You always travel abroad even though we're newlyweds. Edwin, you left me alone. You're the one at fault. I could feel the anger radiating from my parents' faces, but I calmly stated, you're right, the fault lies with my brother. Lenny's expression turned to one of disbelief as she looked at me. I leveled my gaze at her, allowing no warmth to seep through. The real problem is my brother's lack of judgment in choosing a woman like you. Lenny, taken aback by my words, leaned toward me, fuming. What? You've got some nerve, you hideous shut-in, telling me such things. All this chaos, it's your fault. Despite the presence of my parents and brother, Lenny couldn't hold back her true colors. Realizing what she had just blurted out, her hand flew to her mouth. But it was too late. My parents and brother were taken aback, but I just flatly declared, Lenny is always like this. Lenny thinks of me as an ugly shut-in. She played the nice girl in front of everyone else, but she cheats and doesn't hesitate to be abusive to anyone she perceives as beneath her. My brother is also at fault for choosing to marry such a person. I was just stating the truth. After all, Teresa is a shut-in, not an influencer. That's just a lie, right? Lenny's brazen defiance was met with a sigh from my mom. I had no idea that Lenny was like this. Yes, Teresa spends a lot of time at home, but she's not a shut-in. She's a real influencer, Mom said. As Lenny gasped in surprise, I shared the name I use for my influencer activities. I suggested she look it up on her mobile phone, and she hurriedly began her search. Upon seeing the search results, a flustered Lenny looked back and forth between me and her phone. Then, with an expression of disbelief, she pointed at me. Really? Teresa is this person? Yep. Makeup is like magic, isn't it? I'm a beauty influencer. Born with a nondescript face, I use makeup to transform it, creating countless videos of my makeovers and posting them online. I sometimes receive requests from cosmetic companies to advertise their products in my videos. Thankfully, I have a large fan base, and when people think of beauty influencers, my name is often one that comes to mind. This house was built with the money Teresa earned, my mom added. This house, Letty gasped in response. I guess it's hard to believe that someone like me could have built a house in such a prime location so close to the station. As Lenny stood there dumbfounded, the doorbell rang. Wondering who could be visiting at such an hour, I walked to the door and opened it. I was the only one standing when the doorbell rang. A familiar voice called out, "Can I come in?" "Yeah, sure," I responded, and Nathan stepped inside. Seeing him walk through the living room door, Lenny recoiled. "What? Why is Nathan here?" "Oh, you must be the sister-in-law I've heard about. It's nice to know you recognize me." "Thank you," Nathan replied, his radiant smile lighting up the room. He had been an actor since childhood, and we met at a social gathering for content creators, hitting it off right away. Nathan and I had been in a relationship for several years, but we kept it a secret. Upon Nathan's appearance, it seemed that Lenny finally believed I was an influencer. Lenny weakly murmured, "No way." From the other side of the screen, my brother told her, "This isn't the time for you to be upset about that." Things quickly spiraled from there. My brother declared to Lenny that he would demand a settlement and file for divorce. He was going to take a break and return to the U.S., and until then, he instructed Lenny to wait. With Lenny's parents living far away, she had to stay at our house until my brother returned. Our parents looked at Lenny as if she were something disgusting, making it clear that the days until my brother's return would be harsh and painful for her. Once we confirmed that my brother had escaped a woman like Lenny, Nathan and I decided to head home. On the drive back, I asked Nathan, "Why did you come with me?" He replied, "I didn't want my future wife, Teresa, to be mistreated." I found myself smiling at Nathan's kindness. My brother returned to the States 2 weeks later. During that time, Lenny had apparently taken leave and locked herself in her room while drafting the divorce papers. She was said to be crying. I love Edwin the most. But my brother didn't waver at all. After the divorce was finalized, Lenny began living alone, but the men who used to entertain her wouldn't associate with her anymore. Due to the shock of the divorce and her subsequent weight loss, Lenny, unable to receive help from anyone, repeatedly called my brother, but he blocked her calls. Furthermore, he went abroad again, leaving Lenny with no one to rely on. She quit her job and returned to her parents' home. Ironically, the woman who used to mock shut-ins had become one herself. Since then, my brother has been careful about his relationships with women. He met a wonderful woman abroad and married her. The new sister-in-law, a brave woman with beautiful blonde hair, is learning English so that she can communicate with me and our parents. In time, Nathan and I also got married. Our wedding made the news, and the marriage of Nathan, who had been beloved since his childhood acting days, was celebrated. I was accepted by the public as Nathan's wife. Now that everything is resolved and peaceful, my family and I are living happily. Hey, where are you right now? I've been sleeping at home. Sleeping at home? There's no sign of my husband here. He's lying to me. The story goes back to when I was pregnant with our first child. My name is Ashley. I was finally expecting our first child in the second year of our marriage, with just 1 month to go until my due date. I was 9 months pregnant. While excited about the birth, I could easily imagine the confusion of going through childbirth and child rearing for the first time. I had planned to go back to my parents' house this weekend to have them help me out for a while. I mentioned the idea of going back home to my husband during the stable period of my pregnancy, but I thought he had probably forgotten, so I brought it up again today. While lazily watching TV, my husband said, "Going back to your parents? Oh, I think you mentioned something about that. If you're going, why not just go? I'm not going to have any trouble without you here." What the? I was taken aback by my husband's dismissive words, but I didn't want to start an argument, so I decided not to push back. Well, I'm going back this weekend. I'll be giving birth next month and planning to stay for a month or two afterward. So, I guess I'll be back in about 3 months. Please make sure the room is clean and ready for the baby. All right. I would have done it anyway. Oh, and I can't see you off this weekend because I have to work. Oh, all right. I had hoped he would at least accompany me to the station, but that hope was quickly crushed. I knew he was a workaholic, often working on weekends, always seeming busy, but I wished he could spare a thought for how difficult it would be for me, heavily pregnant and carrying a lot of luggage, to navigate the train. While I understand he's busy, I do get lonely sometimes. I don't want our soon-to-be-born baby to feel lonely. Moreover, I've been feeling anxious about whether we will be able to raise our child together at this rate. It's not just my child. When did he become so cold? With these complex feelings, I started packing. Since there was still time before I went back to my parents' house, I decided to send my luggage, other than valuables, by home delivery service. I had been hoping to welcome the baby to a clean house, had cleaned from corner to corner when I started maternity leave a little early. They say women develop a nesting instinct when they become pregnant. I had prepared a baby bed and secured a space for the baby, excited about starting a new life as a family of 3 when I came back in 2.5 months. But my sloppy husband kept dirtying the places I had cleaned. Maybe I was to blame for cleaning too early, but regardless, he seemed to have not lost his sense of living alone at all. He would leave half-drunk bottles of drinks scattered around and left cardboard boxes used for packaging the stuff he bought online opened unattended. Come to think of it, I realized I had never seen my husband cooking or cleaning since we got married. Despite my tidying up, things only got more disordered, and I started worrying about whether the house would be okay while I was away. But then again, the time of childbirth was imminent. The weekend arrived in a flash, and I headed to my parents' home. On the other hand, my husband really went to work without seeing me off. While relaxing at my parents' home, I kept in touch with my husband fairly well. We exchanged emails every day, and I would call him about once every 3 days. but gradually my husband started not answering my calls more frequently. When I asked him, "You haven't been picking up the phone lately. Are you busy?" During the rare times I got through, he started giving vague responses like, "Well, yeah," or "Not really." "You're not cheating on me, are you?" I heard many men cheat when their wives are pregnant. Nah, why would I do that? It's annoying to be doubted. On the phone, my irritated husband made me feel cautious, and I quickly apologized, saying, "No, sorry. It's not good for mental health to have such unnecessary worries while nurturing a precious child in my belly. I must trust my husband," I decided. Then, a few weeks later, my labor pains started. While preparing for admission to the hospital, I called my husband. I felt embarrassed to show my pained expression as I endured labor. I wanted him to be there at the moment of birth at least. Surely, my husband would also be moved by the birth of our child. The labor has started, and it usually takes about half a day for the first child to be born, so he should be able to make it if he starts now. I wanted him to be there at the moment of birth. He could even cut the umbilical cord. When I told him this, my husband let out a sigh of annoyance. "Oh, what? You want me to come by train right now?" "Sorry, I'm tired too, so I can't. I have work tomorrow too." "What? You're still talking about work even at this time? Our child is being born, you know. Is work still your priority?" "Shut up. There's no replacement for my job. This is the moment our child is born. It's not going to happen again. Like I said, there's no replacement for me. If I don't do it, the work won't go around. Can't you understand that? I'm cutting the call because I'm busy." I tried to persuade him somehow, but my words did not resonate with my husband. As I was cut off on the phone, I shed tears while enduring labor pains. Why is my husband so indifferent to our child's birth? From the moment a mother finds out she's pregnant, she puts her child first. But as a father, he was so indifferent. And so, I faced my first childbirth alone in solitude. The labor pains lasted for a full day, and a cute little boy was born the next day. Such a tiny, cute, and beloved existence. After getting discharged, my parents showered the child with love while teaching me various things about child care. By the time a month flew by, I had become adept at bathing the baby. My parents expressed their concern, saying, "Are you okay with such a husband? We can't help worrying about you after we go back." Not wanting to worry them, I tried to reassure them, saying, "Well, I think I can manage somehow. My health is recovering faster than I expected, so maybe it'll go back next week." "Really, don't push yourself. Let us know immediately if anything happens." "Yes, thank you." They often say that a postpartum body is like that of someone who has been in a car accident. But thanks to hormones, my spirits were high and my body was recovering steadily. I was also getting used to taking care of the baby, so I decided to go back home a little earlier than planned. While I was being cared for at my parents' house, there was hardly any contact from my husband. Even when I sent photos and videos of our son, he didn't show much reaction. I guess a parental heart probably sprouts as one actually raises the baby, and perhaps a sense of being a father wouldn't come up until he interacted with the baby. That's how I tried to keep myself going with that thought. I decided to have my parents drop me off at home. I didn't tell my husband that I was coming home, but he should be at home since it's his day off today. I wondered what his reaction would be when he saw our child for the first time. Would my child like our home? After a few hours' drive, we arrived home. I carried my son while my parents loaded their luggage, and I unlocked the door. But what welcomed us was a dark and silent room. "We're home a bit early, but we're back. Hey, no one's here." "Oh, what is this smell?" Entering the living room, a foul odor hit our nostrils. Turning on the light revealed a sight I hadn't imagined. The room was in a state of disarray, reminiscent of a garbage dump. Dirty dishes and half-eaten pizza were stuffed in the sink. Clothes and food and drink trash were scattered about. Half-drunk juice had mold floating in it, emitting a strong odor. The table was covered in stains and dirt. The shower room and sink were filled with black mold. The toilet was dirty and stunk. And in the crib we had prepared for our son, there were piled up unused cardboard boxes and garbage bags. I had told him to keep it clean for welcoming our son, but the reality was far from clean, and I was shocked. There's no way we can live in such a dirty house. Above all, I was most upset about the crib being soiled. "Hey, isn't this too much? What's going on? There's no way we can raise a baby in a place like this." My parents were furious and searched for my husband, opening each room. But my husband was nowhere to be found. Where could he be on his day off? Another weekend shift, perhaps? But we don't even know if his previous shifts were true. He's not on a commission basis, so working on the weekend doesn't increase his salary, and his company is supposed to follow the calendar. I had honestly been dubbing him, always disappearing on the weekends. Let's try calling him, I suggested. There was no way we could stand in such a cluttered room anymore, so I evacuated my bewildered parents outside for a moment and called my husband, but he didn't answer. Finally, on the third try, he picked up. Hey, where are you now? I was sleeping at home. Why? At home? We had searched the whole house, but neither my parents nor I had seen my husband. Could he possibly be buried in a mountain of trash? But we couldn't feel any human presence, and his tone didn't sound like he had just woken up. Then, I heard a woman's voice over the phone. I couldn't make out what she was saying, but it was definitely a woman's voice. At that moment, I realized everything. This man, he's cheating on me. I can't believe he would cheat on me while neglecting our child. The house was a mess while we were gone. He was cheating on me, and I was furious. A father like this is unnecessary for our son. I'm fed up with a husband like this. If he likes the other woman so much, then I'll let him have her. How can you live in such a messy, rotting-smelling house? Oh, I get it. Maybe a burglar came in. I need to report this to the police. Huh? You're at your parents' house, right? What are you talking about all of a sudden? My anger escalated at my confrontational husband, and I raised my voice. You're the one lying about being at home, aren't you? Stop playing dumb. It's absolutely unacceptable to turn the crib into a garbage dump. I'm not coming back to this house. We're getting a divorce. I said this rapidly and hung up the phone. After that, I actually reported to the police that we were victims of a burglary to punish my husband. I told my parents and son to go back to my parents' house first, and I waited for my husband in front of the house. The police arrived before my husband did. I invited them into the house as if I were welcoming guests, and soon after, I saw my husband coming this way. Unbelievably, there was a woman walking alongside him. My husband approached me with a face that seemed to say, "This is bad. Hey, you weren't supposed to be back until next month. But who is she?" The woman standing next to him was glaring at me, arms crossed. And who are you, for that matter? What? In spite of running into his mistress, I felt strangely calm. I decided to ask the woman some questions. As it turned out, my husband had been meeting her while concealing the fact that he was married. I was so disgusted with my husband that I didn't know how to react anymore. Hey, at least hear me out. My husband tried to grab my shoulder in a fluster, but I slapped his hand away, not wanting him to touch me. Don't touch me, it's repulsive. The police are checking the room right now. I hope you feel embarrassed having them scrutinize the mess you've made. I'm leaving now. You can explain to the police. Goodbye. Leaving them with a parting shot, I headed back to my parents' house, leaving my husband and the woman in a daze. There were numerous calls from him, but of course, I did not answer. I finally decided to respond that night. Apparently, he had explained the situation to the police and returned home with a troubled look. The police, pinching their noses against the foul smell and struggling to move around the room, must have been quite embarrassing for him, but he brought it upon himself. After being dumped by the woman he had been lying to, all that was left for my husband was his shame and a house in shambles. Come on, I'm sorry. Come back. I've been looking forward to seeing our son. If he truly felt sorry, he should have at least come to my parents' house. Thinking that he could apologize over the phone and everything would be fine showed what a terrible person he was. Even though you never showed any interest before, you suddenly care. You weren't even there when I gave birth, despite me asking you to come several times. Well, I thought you knew that I would. I'll clean up the room. I can't do household chores without you. I need you. I could imagine my husband getting more desperate and breathless on the other end of the line as I continued to reject him. No matter how much you beg, it's not happening. You should have kept that woman. If you can't handle housework, have her do it for you. But that was just a fling. It was a momentary lapse. You're the only one for me, Ashley. A fling? Weren't you seeing her every time you said you had to work overtime? Well, that's a different, I pressed my husband, who was mumbling incoherently, and he confessed that he had been cheating on me with multiple women from his high school that he had reconnected with at a friend's wedding party. He's a scumbag either way. There's no point in talking. I started to feel chills listening to my husband desperately apologizing in a voice close to tears. I can't believe it. You disgust me. Were you planning to touch our son with those hands? Unthinkable. I won't do it again. I'll come to pick you up right now. I want to see you and our son. I'll prove my sincerity. Let's go home together. I couldn't believe what I was hearing from my husband's defiant voice. What is he thinking at this point? I can't trust you. There's nothing more to talk about. I'll raise our son on my own. Ashley, please forgive. I hung up without hearing the rest of his words. The sound of the call ending echoed emptily in my ear, and so our short marital life came to an end. Half a year has passed since then, and I decided to start working, relying on my parents. Once I've saved up enough money, I intend to leave my parents' house and start living on my own with my son. I'm in the midst of divorce negotiations with my husband, mainly for the sake of alimony. Having limited experience living alone, my husband is apparently unable to manage household chores, and most of his meals are from dining out, leaving the house in disarray. However, that's no longer my concern. I will do my best, expressing my abundant love for my son. You're pitiful, just a dropout kid from the lowest rung. I bet you were raised in poverty, and now your child is living at the bottom of society. I see, so that's your way of thinking, I replied. Got it. My name is Mary. My life, though it feels strange to say it myself, has been full of ups and downs. Just before finishing middle school, my parents passed away in quick succession. As a result, I lost my motivation to study for exams. I just wasn't in the right mental state anymore, and because of this, I failed all the high school entrance exams, including my safety school. So there I was at 15, standing at a crossroads, to take a gap year or start working. Truth be told, I did want to go to high school, but the relatives who took me in didn't have much financial leeway. I also wanted to save my parents' life insurance payout for the future. Plus, there was the embarrassment of entering high school a year late. So, I made the decision to start working and have been doing so ever since. I think I was 19 back then, dating John, who was a coworker at my workplace. He was 27 at the time. You're with someone that much older? Are you sure about this? A guy making moves on a 19-year-old. Is he really responsible? My aunt, a relative, was worried for me, but young as I was, I didn't listen. John is a great guy. Yes, there's an age difference, but an 8-year gap isn't that unusual, right? Well, if it were 25 and 33 maybe, but 19 and 27 is something else. What's the difference? Stop bad-mouthing him. And in that spirit, we got married when I turned 20. Then, a few months later, I found out I was pregnant. I was happy, but it didn't last. When I told John I was pregnant, he said, "What, you plan on having it? Seriously? No way. Okay, I can't deal with a child from a dropout. Why do I have to raise a kid that will be like you? Why would you say such a thing? You knew I was a dropout when we got married, right?" "Yeah, I guess, but no, it won't work out. I mean, having a kid with a dropout, the kid's gonna turn out weird, right? I don't want to raise a kid like that. I also want more free time." John said that and stopped coming home. Even at work, he managed to evade me. He was only urging me to agree to a divorce. As time went on, my feelings for John cooled, and I agreed to the divorce. But my job at the time was at a small company that didn't have a maternity or paternity leave system, so I had no choice but to resign around the same time as the divorce. After that, with the help of my relatives and the remainder of my parents' life insurance money, I managed to give birth safely. I named my son Jacob and have been raising him with all the love I have. Fortunately, I was healthy after giving birth, and I worked multiple part-time jobs to earn our living. By the time Jacob reached elementary school, I had a full-time job and emotional leeway. Now, 20 years have passed since those days. These days, I even have the luxury of going shopping with Jacob on our days off. "Hey, are you married by any chance?" Just then, I heard a voice. A voice I remembered but would rather forget. The owner of the voice was John, my ex-husband, the man who had abandoned me. When I was pregnant 20 years ago, I knew it was you, Mary. "So what brings you to a department store on a day off? Isn't this out of your league?" John looked at me with a smirk on his face. Jacob was probably puzzled by the sudden appearance of a stranger, looking down and troubled. "I thought he might be your boyfriend, but he's pretty young, isn't he?" "Oh, is this the kid from back then?" So it's a boy. Well, it doesn't concern me anyway." "That's right. You and I have nothing to do with each other anymore, John. Why are you talking to me?" "Don't be like that. We used to be in love. You become quite a cold old lady, haven't you?" John was approaching with a grin as if the past meant nothing. Then he said something outrageous. "By the way, is he a dropout too?" "What? What do you mean by that?" "Well, I mean a dropout's child would be a dropout, right? You're a dropout, so it makes sense if he is too, right? Stop it. Don't say such awful things. Ah, but he does carry half of my blood, so he must have at least made it through high school, right? Well, in this day and age, even with a high school diploma, you're pretty much at the bottom of the barrel, John exclaimed, mentioning the name of a well-known multinational company, the type you'd often see in commercials these days. Mary, even you must know this company, right? I'm a department head at a huge corporation. I'm what you'd call an elite, right? And what does an elite want with me? Are you stupid or what? Do you think I have any use for someone as uneducated and poor as you? I just called out to you for old time's sake. Frankly, you're a nuisance. Don't say that. That's why you'll never amount to anything, you know. Ever since I met you, my luck turned around. I was headhunted by a major corporation, and I've been climbing the corporate ladder at a rapid pace. Life sure is different without a jinx like you around. Oh, so I'm a change to you, John. In that case, wouldn't it be better if you didn't contact me? No, sometimes I just want to look at the bottom of the barrel to remind myself how fortunate I am. You see, in my company, there's no one like you, not even the lowliest workers. But it really seems that poverty is a spiral, and the bottom will always stay at the bottom. Is that all you wanted to say? We're in a hurry, you know. Hold on a second. Let me say a word to my son. As he said that, John put a casual hand on Jacob's shoulder, a smug grin on his face. Then, while smiling, he said, "You're probably having a tough life too, but it can't be helped. Blame your mother for being poor and uneducated. If you're going to resent someone, resent your mother for giving birth to you right out of middle school." John seemed satisfied after saying this. Just then, a beautiful woman who seemed to have a close relationship with John came over. "John, what's taking so long?" The restroom was crowded. "Oh, I just happened to run into an old acquaintance. Can you believe this woman dropped out of school in the middle of high school? Not even a high school grad, but a middle school dropout. Can you believe it? And her son will probably end up at the bottom of the barrel as well. Isn't it good that you didn't have to lead such a poor life? You're lucky to have caught a high-performing guy like me," John bragged, completely ignoring us as if we weren't even in his field of view. However, the woman seemed to notice Jacob when he raised his head. She pointed at him and started to shake uncontrollably. Isn't he? What's wrong? Isn't that the president of one of our major clients?" Surprised by the woman's voice, John turned around. The moment he saw Jacob's face, his eyes widened instantly. Seeing this, Jacob slowly opened his mouth. "I did hear your company's name earlier, but seeing your face, I thought it might be you. Indeed, you were the one. Thanks for your hospitality at that dinner the other day." That Mr. Jacob. You were so modest at the restaurant. It's surprising to see this side of you, criticizing people publicly, calling them low-life and uneducated as you please. You're pretty rude, aren't you? No, that's Lily. Why didn't you tell me? I couldn't see him well. Besides, I work in a different department. I can't remember all the clients' faces. Useless. What did you say? The man and the woman, John and Lily, started arguing, but Jacob ignored them and said, "Well, I'm not interested in your arguments anyway. I now understand the director's usual way of thinking. We were discussing introducing our system to your company. Let's forget that idea," Jacob said, turning to leave. "No, wait. Please, this is some misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding? What's misunderstood about the fact that you've insulted me in public?" "That is, it's your fault, Mary." "Ha! Why is it my fault?" I asked, incredulous. "That's because, why the hell is someone like you, a high school dropout, with Mr. Jacob? Do you know who this man is? He started a business while in college and has numerous patents. The system he develops is so advanced that major companies are dying to adopt it." "Is that so? Why are you with him when you don't even know that?" "I don't know. I don't usually talk about work with my son." "What? Your son?" "Yes, nice to meet you. I am Jacob, the son of the high school dropout." "Well, it seems you want to say something to my mother. Please go ahead and say it all now. After all, we probably won't meet again." "Oh well, what's going on? Why is someone like you? Do you want to say why someone like Jacob's mother is a high school dropout?" John was taken aback by Jacob's words. He seemed to want to insult me but didn't seem to have the power to do it. He glanced back and forth between me and Jacob, looking troubled. "From my early childhood, my mother has taught me many things. She didn't have a higher education, only going as far as middle school, but she read many books and taught me a lot from them." Who? What? I can't believe Mary had such talent. There was one thing my mother never spoke about, though: the criticisms of my father, who abandoned her and me during her pregnancy. I've always resented my father, but my mother always said it was her own fault for being naive. Even when we had no money, even when we were hungry, she was always smiling. She's the person I respect the most. So you respect her, but Mr. Jacob, you have my blood too, right? Can you really not sign a contract with my company? Yes, I can't. What's really unthinkable is your behavior. This is a public place, you know. Don't you think your actions have been embarrassing? No. That's the truth. I just see Mary as a stupid woman. That's all. And what does that make you? The man who had a child with this stupid woman. What kind of person does that make you, the one who abandoned her when she was so young? Maybe she was naive, but do you have any idea how much hardship she has gone through? You seem proud of working for a big company, but why didn't you give her even a single cent of child support? Ah, John seemed at a loss for words at Jacob's accusations. Upon hearing Jacob's words, Lily's expression changed. Her face, which had previously looked troubled, was now glaring at John. Hold on a second. That's not what I heard. No, you just be quiet. No way. Didn't you tell me that your previous wife cheated on you and left? That you weren't allowed to see your child? That you couldn't even get her to accept your child support payments, so you just kept saving it? Was all that sob story a lie? It seems likely that it was a lie. My mother and I are still living with our relatives. The father there should know the place. If he really wanted to give child support, he could come there at any time. Hey Mom, has this man ever contacted you? Not once. Not on my cell phone, not at a relative's house, and of course, I've never heard anything about child support. Hearing my words, Lily looked furious. In contrast, John turned a sickly pale color. You lied. You're the worst. I'm glad I never married you. We're breaking up right now. Wait, Lily, please don't leave me. John hurriedly chased after Lily. Jacob and I looked at each other and burst into laughter at the retreating figures. John's appearance was so pathetic that we couldn't help but laugh. We enjoyed some window shopping after that and went home feeling satisfied. Jacob later filled me in on the details. His company and John's were about to sign a substantial contract, but Jacob decided to withdraw at the last minute. Naturally, John's company asked why. It seems like Jacob was completely honest about it all. He said, "Your representative was my father, the man who left my pregnant mother and never provided child support. To trust such a person and do business with him? Impossible. The system I developed is like my own child. To entrust this system to him, just thinking about it makes me feel disgusted." Of course, this failure became a major issue. The company apparently punished John by demoting and sidelining him, hoping that this would make Jacob reconsider the contract. From Jacob's perspective, it seems like he might reconsider if they cut John's bonus. Surely John will be facing even tougher times from now on. But that's what he deserves, right? He's 48 now, so he only needs to endure another 12 years until retirement. My mom had it way tougher for much longer. When you consider that, this isn't tough at all. Jacob, saying this, had a face of genuine anger. I understood his feelings, so I didn't plan to stop him. In his panic, John came running to our relative's house. At the entrance, he bowed deeply, pleading desperately. "I'm sorry for what I did back then. I lied about having paid child support, but I do have savings. I'll give Jacob the equivalent of child support as a gift while I'm alive. I'll even pay Mary compensation if necessary. So please reconsider." However, Jacob didn't even want to hear such talk. He said to John, "I'm not interested in your savings now. Our hardship was in the past. You didn't help us then, and now you only want to save yourself. That's an awful thing to say." Sorry. I was young too. Please forgive me." People who truly regret their actions wouldn't say they could pay if needed. You're just selfish to the end. Please leave. If you come to this house again, I'll call the police. Wouldn't that jeopardize your position in the company even further? At Jacob's words, John fled in a panic. Thanks to Jacob, he probably won't come to this house again. We should be able to live peaceful days from now on. Jacob is currently busy earning all his college credits, but once that's all done, he plans to take the entire family on a trip to a hot springs resort. I told him he didn't have to do that, but Jacob insisted he wanted to return the favor. If that's the case, we'll gratefully take him up on his offer. Surely we'll be able to have a good time on that trip. My name is Douglas. I had a brother, Jonathan, who was 2 years younger than me. but he passed away in a car accident 3 years ago. His wife, Kelly, was left a widow. To support my grieving family, I moved back to my parents' home from living alone, helping them and Kelly through the tough times. In this situation, I uncovered a shocking secret about Kelly. Embarrassed, she made a surprising proposal to me. Dinner tonight is your favorite beef stew. Try not to work late and come home early, okay? I checked the message Kelly sent and replied, "Thanks, I'll be home soon." "Great, be safe on your way back," she responded. I put my phone away and started the car. It felt like a message from my wife, but technically she's not. Kelly was Jonathan's wife, making her my sister-in-law. After Jonathan passed away, she started living with my parents. I also moved back home to support my family. Of course, I was devastated by Jonathan's death, but I felt the need to support my parents and Kelly, and that motivated me. As 3 years have passed since the accident, my family has started to recover. Kelly now works part-time and helps with the housework. I heard that Jonathan fell for Kelly because of her cooking, and honestly, her cooking is excellent. I look forward to it every day I'm home. "Hi Douglas, how was your day?" When I got home, Kelly, who was wearing an apron, greeted me and took my bag and coat to my room. "Make sure to wash your hands. There's a flu going around." "Got it," I replied. I washed my hands as she told me and went to the dining room. Together with my parents and Kelly, we sat at the table eating dinner while chatting. It's the happiest and most peaceful time of the day. "Oh, by the way, Douglas, are you good with computers?" "I use them at work, so I know a bit." My computer in my room suddenly stopped working. "Can you take a look if you don't mind?" "Did anything happen to cause it?" "No, it just won't turn on suddenly." "That's strange. I'll check it out later." "Thank you so much." Although I'm not an expert on computers, I've fixed my tech-challenged boss's computer many times when he said it broke without him doing anything. Of course, I couldn't refuse a request from my sweet sister-in-law. After dinner, I took a shower and went to Kelly's room. She had also showered and was in her pajamas, ready for bed, but she welcomed me warmly. "How is it? Do you think it needs to be repaired?" she asked anxiously, watching me as I checked her computer. I quickly found the problem and got the power back on. "Wow, amazing. How did you do that?" "It was nothing. The power cord was just unplugged." "Oh, so it's not broken. Mind if I check it a bit more?" "Sure, go ahead." Kelly looked down. "I can't believe it was just the cord." "How embarrassing," she murmured softly. I couldn't help but chuckle, thinking she really was bad with machines. The computer originally belonged to Jonathan, and now Kelly and my parents use it occasionally for research. It still has a lot of data Jonathan left behind. Feeling nostalgic, I opened one of the files. He was into photography and often took pictures of our family and landscapes. While looking at the nostalgic photos, I noticed an unfamiliar file. "Oh, that is," Kelly tried to stop me, but it was too late. I had already clicked and opened the file. Displayed were numerous images of the recent pop star Cherry. "Oh my," Kelly blushed with embarrassment, covering her face with her hands. I was surprised and said, "No way, Kelly, you like Cherry?" "Yes," she nodded while still covering her face. "I'm a big fan of Cherry too." "Really?" She looked at me in surprise as I excitedly continued. "I never thought I'd find another fan so close by. Did you go to last month's concert too?" "I did. I was there too. But Kelly, didn't you say you were meeting a friend that day?" "Oh, you said you had a work party, right?" We looked at each other, realizing neither of us had mentioned going to a pop star's concert. I had kept my love for Cherry a secret from my parents and coworkers because I felt embarrassed to be a 33-year-old guy obsessed with a teenage star. I understood that Kelly felt the same way. "Now that you've seen the file, there's no helping it, Douglas. You'll join me, right?" "Huh?" "In supporting Cherry, you'll join me, right? And of course, we'll keep it a secret from my in-laws." "Oh, sure." Though I was a bit confused, I soon nodded. "Okay, let's do that. I'm glad to have someone close by to talk about Cherry with." "Cool, it's a promise," Kelly said, offering her pinky for a promise. We made a pinky promise, forming a fan alliance for Cherry. From then on, we shared a secret bond. We went to Cherry's concerts and events together, discussing our thoughts on her new songs. Unlike me, who worked full-time, Kelly had a part-time job with flexible hours, so she would go to the store on release days and buy my CDs too. Kelly didn't have a driver's license, so I would drive us to concerts and events. We had a win-win relationship as fellow fans. Hey, it's hard to ask, but are you two in that kind of relationship? My mother suddenly asked about 6 months after Kelly and I had formed our alliance. The four of us, my mother, my father, Kelly, and I, were having our usual peaceful dinner, but her question broke the tranquility. We had been going to Cherry's concerts together and spending more time talking in each other's rooms late into the night, which seemed suspicious to my parents. Indeed, Kelly is beautiful and kind, full of feminine charm. I was quite taken with her cooking, but I treated her only as my sister-in-law and tried not to think otherwise. It's nothing like that. Kelly is my sister-in-law. At that moment, Kelly's face showed a brief expression of sadness. I was startled and tried to confirm again, but by then, she was already smiling. That's right. Douglas and I just realized we both support the same pop star and we've been talking more because of that. A pop star? My parents looked puzzled, so we briefly explained about Cherry. Until then, we hadn't mentioned it, thinking it wouldn't resonate with their generation. But it was impossible to keep it hidden in that situation. Just as I expected, my father got angry when he heard about it. Douglas, you're old enough to know better than to waste your money on such things. Why don't you find a good woman nearby and get married? Aren't you ashamed that your younger brother got ahead of you? He scolded me, then turned his stern gaze to Kelly. Kelly, if you have time to spend on such nonsense, you should spend it praying for Jonathan and living virtuously. Yes, Kelly nodded, looking like she was about to cry. I wanted to talk back to my father, but the atmosphere was so tense that I couldn't say anything. Dinner ended on an awkward note, and from that day on, there was a distance between Kelly and me. Even though we lived in the same house, we barely talked and, of course, didn't go out together anymore. Our messages became strictly businesslike, like I'll be home by 7 o'clock, and got it. She no longer greeted me at the door every day. I still liked Cherry, but Kelly hasn't mentioned her since that day. My father's words also lingered in my mind. I'm 33 now and turning 34 on my next birthday. All my local friends are already married, and some even have kids in elementary school. I wanted to get married and have a family too, but I was never popular and I always thought, who would want to be with me? I never took it seriously. My brother Jonathan was always more talented and popular than me, even as a kid. It wasn't surprising that he married a beautiful wife before I did. Instead of feeling jealous that my younger brother got ahead of me, I thought, well, that's how it is. After he passed away, I was so focused on taking care of my family that I didn't have time to think about myself. However, my parents and Kelly have nowadays recovered from the shock of the accident and are living their lives cheerfully. It's probably time for me to start thinking seriously about my own future. With that in mind, I decided to start actively looking for a marriage partner. I had coworkers introduce me to women and attended social events, but nothing seemed to work out. I realized that I was comparing every woman to Kelly. They weren't as considerate as Kelly, they didn't cook as well as her, they weren't as beautiful as her, and they didn't understand my favorites like she did. I knew I shouldn't set my expectations too high, but I also couldn't compromise on what was important for a lifelong partner. Half a year passed with no results despite my efforts. One night, I came home late from a dinner party to find some food covered with cling film and a note on the table. I picked up the note and felt tears welling up. Hi Douglas, please heat up dinner and eat. There's salad in the fridge too. You need to eat a balanced diet. Seeing Kelly's thoughtful note about my health made me happy, and for some reason, it brought tears to my eyes. The happiest moments for me are when I share meals and laugh with her and my parents. No matter how hard I try to meet someone, I can't find anyone more wonderful than her. This realization made me feel empty inside. I realized that somewhere along the line, I had fallen for Kelly not just as my sister-in-law, but as a woman. Douglas? Hearing my name, I quickly turned around to see Kelly standing at the door. She was in her pajamas, ready for bed. Seeing my face, she rushed over in alarm. Are you crying? Are you hurt? It's nothing. I'm just happy, I'm not sure why. I tried to wipe my tears and explain. She looked concerned and gently patted my back. I'll heat up your dinner, she said, warming up the food on the table and the soup in the pot. In front of me, there was a comforting, familiar meal. Thank you very much. I started eating, feeling overwhelmed with gratitude, and on the verge of tears again. As I ate, trying to hold back the tears, Kelly spoke. It's been a while since we've had a quiet talk like this, hasn't it? Yeah, right. You've been coming home late a lot. Is work tough? Well, actually, I've been dating. What? Her face contorted with sadness upon hearing my words. I felt like I had seen that expression somewhere before. but I couldn't place it. It was late at night, and my parents were already asleep. In a fit of frustration, I poured out my feelings to Kelly. I've met a lot of women, but things just haven't worked out. It's because you're so amazing. The happiness I feel every day being cared for by you, I can't imagine being with anyone else. I'm just your sister-in-law, right? Her words felt cold and distancing, but I continued regardless. I know I should cherish you as my sister-in-law, but somewhere along the line, I fell for you as a woman. She stayed silent, looking down. I grew anxious and leaned in to see her face. Suddenly, tears began streaming down her cheeks. Kelly, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have brought this up so suddenly. I hurriedly apologized, but Kelly shook her head, denying it. No, it's because I'm happy. She looked at me through her tears. Seeing her expression, I remembered the same look of sadness on her face when I told my father about 6 months ago that Kelly is just my sister-in-law. So that means, could it be you've liked me all along too? Yes, I've always liked you. Kelly wiped her tears away. I was stunned but overjoyed. After Jonathan passed away, you tried so hard to support my in-laws and me. I know you were grieving too. That meant so much to me and helped me so much. I loved going to Cherry's concerts with you and spending time together. I wanted it to stay like that forever. I see. After your father scolded us, we couldn't talk as much, but I thought about it a lot. Praying for Jonathan is important, but if that's all I do, I don't feel alive. I want to support my favorite pop star and find someone new to love and support. She looked at me with a determined expression. I've been holding back until now because you said I was just your sister-in-law. I tried not to talk to you and acted distant, but can I stop holding back from now on? Yeah, you don't need to hold back anymore. We'll explain it to Dad again and make him understand. I'm so glad. I'm not going to hold back anymore. She smiled brightly and my heart fluttered. The next day, Kelly and I talked to my parents during dinner. We explained that we genuinely cared for each other and that Cherry's music had been a source of comfort during tough times. My father wasn't convinced right away, but he actually realized that after he scolded us, the atmosphere in the family had become strained and somber. In the end, he said, if you two are serious, and it is you wish. Hearing that, both Kelly and I felt relieved. From that day on, our relationship changed. We started dating not as siblings-in-law, but as a couple. Honestly, transitioning from seeing Kelly as family to seeing her as a romantic partner was confusing. Even so, my feelings for her outweighed the confusion. We officially got married 3 months later. We decided not to have a wedding or move out, continuing to live with and support my parents. We chose not to have a wedding because we knew some people might judge us for marrying as in-laws. I wanted to protect Kelly from any hurtful comments. Even without a wedding, I don't think our marriage is wrong. Kelly and I will never forget Jonathan, but we have to move forward. For that, I need Kelly, and I believe she feels the same way.
Finished moving out yet? I asked. We're just about to leave, Joseph replied. Good, you're quick. We'll move our stuff in right away too. My brother-in-law Michael and his family seemed to have it all planned. The moment we left our family home, they moved their stuff in, settling in as if they owned the place. Did we do the right thing letting them in? I vented my concerns to Joseph. He simply laughed. Don't worry. Let them have their fun. It's them who will come crying to us later. Sure enough, a few months later, Michael called us in a panic. I couldn't help but laugh at their grand misconception. My name is Mary. I met Joseph in college. He was a senior, a year older than me. At the time, the 1-year age gap felt significant, and Joseph, being so reliable, looked truly dependable. As my feelings for Joseph grew, I confessed to him. Fortunately, Joseph felt the same way, and we started dating. Even after graduation and starting our jobs, our love continued to grow. We couldn't live without each other. Joseph proposed during our 5th year of work. I was thrilled but nervous about meeting his parents. Joseph, your dad runs his own business, right? And your mom comes from a wealthy family. Will they be okay with someone like me? Joseph reassured me with a smile. You're thoughtful and most of all kind. They'll love you. Boosted by his confidence, I nervously introduced myself to his parents. So, you're Mary. We've been looking forward to meeting you. You're as cute and competent as Joseph said. Has Joseph been any trouble to you? No, not at all. Joseph has been so kind to me. Just as Joseph predicted, both his dad Daniel and mom Linda welcomed me warmly. You feel like you've been our daughter forever, they said.
If we ever had a daughter, she would have been just like you, they added. I sincerely shared with my in-laws that I also thought of Daniel and Linda as my own parents. After our wedding and honeymoon, Joseph and I were in a rush to find a new place as our current condo was expiring. That's when my father-in-law made us an offer. Actually, I'll be traveling overseas for a few months starting next month. It's a pretty laid-back job, so I was planning on taking my wife along for some sightseeing. Why don't you live in our house while we're away and take your time finding a new place? Really? That would be amazing for us. Struggling to find a good property, it was an offer we couldn't refuse. If you don't find a place you like, you can continue living here. I did miss the words of my mother-in-law, spoken with a hint of reserve. I'd be so happy if we could. Is that really okay? Are you sure you're all right with that, Mary? Living with your mother-in-law and all. I think of you, Linda, as a real mother, not just my mother-in-law. Joseph's family home is quite a mansion with multiple rooms. Although not built for two families, it's more than spacious, with guest restrooms and 2 bathrooms. There's only one kitchen, but it was easier for me to alternate cooking for 4 people with my mother-in-law than preparing meals just for the 2 of us. We had a good relationship with my in-laws, so there were only benefits to living with them. We gratefully accepted their offer and started our new life in Joseph's family home. After we moved, they hosted a housewarming party and invited all the relatives. You're the guest of honor. Just sit and enjoy, my mother-in-law told me. I found it equally enjoyable to hear stories from relatives I usually didn't get to see. You really found a considerate woman, Joseph, the relatives would say each time my mother-in-law and I exchanged smiles. Then I realized something was off. Joseph's older brother wasn't there. Joseph is the second son and has an older brother named Michael, 2 years his senior. While most of the relatives showed up, Michael and his wife were noticeably absent. Daniel, where are Michael and his wife today? I asked my father-in-law. He looked a little downcast as he replied, They're fine. Don't worry about them. When I looked puzzled, my mother-in-law elaborated. Michael used to always come to these things, but ever since he married Jessica, he's been distant. I had heard from Joseph that his mom always favored the eldest son, and she seemed to greatly dislike Jessica for changing her beloved son. In the end, Michael and his wife never showed up that day. Joseph and I sent a moving and greeting letter to their home afterward. A few days later, I received a phone call from Michael. Is Joseph there? His voice was curt. Ah, Michael, Joseph is at work today. Can I take a message? You're Joseph's wife, right, Mary? Yes, it's been a while. Why are you two living in the family home? Huh? This is a moving notice. The new address is my parents' house, isn't it? Yeah, well, Daniel and the others recommended it, so we've been graciously living here. When I heard about your housewarming, I thought how audacious you were to use my parents' house. But I never thought you'd actually be living there. You've got some nerve. It was clear Michael didn't like that we were living at his parents' home. Phone calls aren't cutting it. I'm coming over this weekend to talk. Daniel will be away scouting for an overseas trip next weekend. I don't care about Dad. I need to talk with you and Joseph. Well, Joseph might be busy with work too. Seriously, then you'll do. And so Michael came to our home the next weekend. Mother-in-law seemed delighted to see her son after such a long time. Mom, you're here too. Of course, I've been looking forward to seeing you, Michael. I'll be heading to Dad's next week, so I'm glad we could meet. Oh yeah, I heard Dad got a job overseas. Michael said this with disinterest and glared at me. Since your eldest son is here, how about making some coffee? Oh sorry, I said as I hurried to make the coffee. Michael sneered. Just coffee, no snacks? You really don't get it. Usually you serve sweets too. Sorry, I rushed to get some snacks, but Michael stopped me. You're not planning on using store-bought snacks, are you? Get some cake from that place downtown. Remember that for next time. Mother-in-law seemed pleased with her eldest son's visit and didn't offer any help. Mary, could you go get some? Michael has always loved their cakes. It seemed mother-in-law wasn't on my side here either. All right, I said as I prepared to go shopping. Michael had another demand. For dinner, make me a hamburger steak. Use demi-glace sauce, and don't you dare buy store-made sauce. You're staying for dinner too. You got a problem with that? It's your duty as my brother's wife to entertain me. I went shopping and immediately started preparing dinner. Even though he said he wanted to talk, I had no time for conversation as I got wrapped up in Michael's whims. When dinner was finally ready and I thought we could talk, Michael dropped a bombshell. Why are there 3 plates? Because Linda will be eating too, right? If Mom's here, it's obvious she's eating. The only one who's in the way is you. In the way? Yeah, I want to have a quiet dinner with Mom. There's no seat for you. You can't be serious. After making me prepare the meal, Michael kicked me out of the house. I ended up eating alone outside, then came back when I thought the coast was clear. Shouldn't we talk now? I finally broached the subject with Michael, who nonchalantly replied, "That talk is unnecessary now." What do you mean? Jessica and I have decided to live in this house. You and Joseph will have to leave. What? We've already moved in. Don't you think it's better for me, the eldest son, to stay in this house? Mom, my mother-in-law looked regretful as she spoke to me. Mary, I apologize. Michael finally seemed to be stepping up as the eldest son, which gave my mother-in-law peace of mind. Upon hearing his mom's words, Michael grinned smugly. See, even Mom agrees with me. So get your stuff packed and move out, Michael said, leaving in a good mood. Caught off guard, I was alone in the bathroom when Joseph finally came home from work. What's wrong, Mary? He asked. I relayed what Michael had told me. Michael said that. I can't believe he treat you so poorly. Joseph was furious and reported the situation to his father overseas. After talking to his father, Joseph said to me, I'm sorry you had to go through this. Let's move out and live on our own. Encouraged by Joseph, I started packing our belongings. Just when we were about to leave, Michael called. Are you done moving? We're about to leave. Good, you're quick. We'll be bringing our stuff over soon. As soon as we left, Michael and his family moved their belongings into the house, acting as if it were their own. Did we make the right choice? I asked Joseph, seeing Michael and Jessica do as they please. Don't worry about it. Let them do what they want. They'll be the ones regretting it later, Joseph reassured me. And just like Joseph said, a few months later, Michael called us in a panic. Hey, Dad and Mom just contacted me. They said they're coming home from the airport. What's going on? Isn't it obvious? Their assignment overseas is over, so they're coming back. I thought they'd be staying there for a while. I didn't hear anything about them coming back. I thought this house was handed down to us. Originally, we planned to live together once they returned. You knew that when you pushed us out to live here, didn't you? Jessica would never agree to live with them. But their belongings are still in the house, right? Where did you think they'd live once they got back? Michael got defensive. I thought they left the stuff they didn't need here. You sold it. You sold their belongings. Yeah, Jessica said we should make money off it if it's not needed. My in-laws had left behind valuable items like jewelry and watches. If they sold those, it would sum up to a lot of money. So where's the money now? It's gone. We spent it like a bonus. What happens if they find out? I guess it's only a matter of time then. Damn, what should I do? Mary, can you come over and help? Help? Why should I? So you're Mom's favorite over Jessica, aren't you? Help me out by making it look like Jessica instigated all this. Protecting the eldest son is the duty of a brother's wife. Don't kid yourself. No way I'd ever lift a finger for a disrespectful couple like you. Please, I apologize for everything up until now. An apology won't change anything. You should atone for your own mistakes. That's the rule of the eldest son, isn't it? Ignoring Michael's pleading voice on the other end of the line, I hung up the phone and then talked to Joseph. Joseph chuckled. Yeah, because there's no way Jessica, who never got along with Dad and Mom, would agree to move back in. Dad even said to live wherever we want until they give up and move out. He's covering all the moving and rental costs. I see. So Joseph, who had been quite angry with Michael's presumptuousness, so easily decided to move out because he knew this. I figured if I told you, Mary, you'd probably tip them off. Sorry for keeping quiet. No worries. I feel much better now. Michael and Jessica were stuck waiting for my parents-in-law because they had nowhere else to go, with no savings and a canceled lease. When my parents-in-law returned home from the airport, they were furious to find their belongings sold off. I never thought you'd be this irresponsible. You're not worth retraining. Get out now. Wait, I didn't think you were coming back. I thought Jessica and I could live here. Isn't Mom on my side? Even mother-in-law couldn't cover for him. Michael never intended to live with us. I was a fool to hope he'd change. My parents-in-law handed Michael and Jessica the bills for the jewelry and watches they had sold and kicked them out. We can't pay this. We have nowhere to live. That's right. I'm not even working, Jessica pleaded. Father-in-law shouted at the knave couple. Unbelievable. You spend money you can't repay in a matter of months. Being jobless is no excuse. Work and pay it back. The stern voice of father-in-law finally got through to them. Jessica began juggling multiple part-time jobs, using all her earnings for repayment. They couldn't cover father-in-law's monthly payment plan, so even Michael's salary had to fill in the gap. The two are now living frugally in a cheaper, smaller apartment than before. Later, mother-in-law and father-in-law came to the condo where Joseph and I live. Mary, I'm truly sorry. I got carried away thinking Michael could live with us. It's okay. It's in the past. No, it's not okay. And I'd like to ask you again, Mary. Would you consider living with us? Mother-in-law seemed genuinely remorseful. We've always known that mother-in-law isn't a bad person. Joseph and I looked at each other and nodded. Our minds were made up. Of course, if it's okay with Daniel and Linda, we'd love to move back into that house. We all agreed to live together again as a family of 4. I feel like this incident has strengthened the bond between my in-laws and me even more.